then someone else is running the meeting.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Nah,
No, we would take care of it at the end.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Take
If
care
you
of it.
wanted to have somebody else chair the rest of the meeting once we're
Yeah.
done with
Right.
this
That's
business.
yeah, that was the case. Not tonight. Not in all of tonight. Come on, I got to go out with a bang. Hopefully not a pistol to my forehead.
Close that door. Okay.
Depends on how late we go tonight, Bob.
My day started at 3 a.m. Yeah, I'm not going to go much past 9.
Can I start your day off with a question?
Sure.
So my
As long as it's not,
question is,
it's not as long as it's not related to this case yet.
no,
Okay,
it's a computer question.
sure.
Does one computer over another make a difference on how it would receive internet from? So as you know, or I think you know, I live in an underground house.
Yes.
So we do have internet that reaches quite a ways into our house. But if I got a better computer, would it reach further?
No.
Okay.
What it will happen is that it will process faster. So you will have, for instance, less. Well, like for example, I'm just going to use Joe as an example. Joe usually is on his phone, which has a slower processor than a computer.
Yep.
So there are times where you can see, well, he's not on, but you can hear a delay, and Joe typically has a slightly half a second delay between, for instance, when Susan asks him to vote and when we hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Well, we can hear you now.
Well, you see,
You got that
delay,
quarter second.
That
That's
delay
what-
may be eternal to me.
Yes. And it's I mean, it's absolutely fine, but what in Tim's example, it would be that delay would most likely be less.
Can I
If I could add something,
Sure, go ahead, Linda.
Tim, I think you're familiar with my situation, and
Yeah.
in order for me to bump it from the office where the Wi-Fi is to the house, I have an extender plugged in at the house and it bumps the signal, but that signal is only as strong as it's only going to extend what's already out there, but you may be able to, by buying a $30 or $40 extender, you might be able to get that Wi-Fi to the back end of the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I'll talk to you about that, Linda. It's 6:30 and I don't want to screw up the meeting.
No, I knew
Thank
we
you
hadn't
for the
started
information,
yet,
no.
so.
Sure.
Okay.
1, 2,
No,
3.
I guess we're getting ready here. People are
Yes,
coming.
we are. People are coming in, and we've got a quorum at this point. Let me see if I can get. Okay. I will call the Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting of June 10th, 2021 to order at 6:31. Members of the board can speak for themselves or introduce themselves and indicate if there are have someone else in the room with them, in whatever order you would like.
Tim Janderberg. No.
Al Kreider, alone.
Lee Baldwin
Smith.
alone.
Betty Smith, the cat's around here somewhere.
Bob Strobel by myself in my office. Okay.
Joe,
Oops.
all by himself.
Okay. And if I will tell you tonight, if you see people, if you see me looking around, I've got lots of external things go around. I've lost a computer monitor, so I'm having to do a lot of scrambling, but that's okay. Pull this up here. Okay, we don't even have any minutes tonight.
I didn't see any.
Okay, wow, that really makes me.
That's your going away present.
I guess so. Thank you.
I didn't
Okay,
think you had enough time to read them by the time I finally
yeah,
finished filling them in.
that's not
They're
a
pretty
complaint.
long.
Okay, and as far as the meeting goes tonight, I believe Ms. Baldwin has recused herself in the past, and she should do so tonight. And seeing as she is, thank you. There she-
Yeah.
She muted herself. Thank you. Okay. There's that. There's that. I think.
Point of information, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Are we meeting in real live flesh next meeting? Is that the current idea?
Couldn't tell you. I'm not going to be chair at that point in time.
So a couple procedural things that I'll just throw out here at the beginning, so we're all aware of them. The governor announced today that he will not be further extending the emergency declaration. So that means the emergency orders 12 and 23 in particular that boards have been using over the last year and a half will lapse with the emergency declaration that I believe expires sometime tomorrow. So
Like
2
about
weeks from
midnight or
now,
something.
we will no longer have the well, I guess to back up, RSA 91A requires us to either have a quorum of the board present in one location. So 4 or more of you need to be in one room to be able to count additional people online and have them participate, unless an emergency exists. And I believe the prevailing interpretation before clarification in those emergency orders was that not only did there need to be a physical emergency for why you could not meet, there also needed to be some sort of pressing, borderline emergency for why you had to also conduct business that night and couldn't just punt it down the road. So that combination of things is leaning towards we would need to find a way to get at least 4 people in one room. But I have not had a moment to talk to Linda about how that would work since that announcement this afternoon. The other thing that I wanted to say is that since that would also mean we're losing Emergency Order 23 that exempts us from typical municipal timelines, including the 65-day clock for application review. That puts us back to that pre-pandemic requirement that either we need to render a decision within 65 days or we need the applicant's consent to continue those proceedings beyond 65 days. So I've already confirmed with Attorney Allard in writing prior to tonight's meeting that the applicant is amenable to one further meeting of this case, provided it is for deliberation only and the public hearing has been closed. So we have that continuation request lined up while the public hearing is still open. So I think we are definitely able, if and when the time comes, to continue to a date and time certain. I just wanted to make that procedurally clear before it became a question later on. So Joe, does that answer your question? That maybe, but we're going to have to figure out how?
Yes, it does, James. Thanks. I mean, more or less it does. Obviously, there's still the open end of what might be
Actually figuring out how.
Yeah. Okay. We'll let that stand for the moment.
Okay, thank you. And that reminds me, is the last time I probably will have to do this, is that according to the governor's emergency orders 12 and 23, this body is authorized to meet electronically. Okay, we do have a quorum. We've established voting designation, which is all members present who have not recused themselves, which would be Kreider, Strobel, Smith, Jandeber, and McCaffrey. I got to go through, make sure I get everybody. Okay.
Mr. Kreider.
Did I say him? No, I didn't.
No.
Sorry, Mr. Kreider.
I thought you did, but okay.
Thought I did, but what, it doesn't matter. Okay, case 19-12, Michael Sullivan, Aroma Joe's. And looking at that, what I think I'll do, did we receive any additional letters for the public between the last request and this request?
I am aware of a letter from Attorney Manzelli and a letter from Jim Hadley. I am not aware of any more than those two.
Okay, that's what I thought as well, but I just wanted to double check. We have Ms. Manzelli with us tonight, and she has requested to speak the last time as well. Okay. Any reason we should not just open public comment, James?
I think I laid out how I would suggest doing things. So I'd suggest, giving it to the applicant first to see if they have any statements they'd like to make, final remarks that any of the consultants would like to make. I think for the board, it's up to you whether you want to question, if you have remaining questions, whether you want to question the applicant's team now or after public comment.
Yep. Okay. I misread a line. Okay. Mr. Sullivan and team, would you want to give us an update on where we stand? Any changes, any developments further between the last time we talked?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Brett Allard with Bernstein Scher on behalf of the applicant, Michael Sullivan. I'm just going to give a sort of global presentation, I guess, based on the nature of how long this has gone on for and how many items there are in the record and where we're at. I guess you could sort of consider it our closing arguments. Probably a good way to look at it. So it'll be more of a high-level overview of everything, but I think it makes sense to really just summarize the entire thing, since tonight is going to be the last night that we or the public is allowed to speak. And as set forth in James' staff memo, very good and comprehensive staff memo, we would just like to reserve some time for rebuttal after the public has had an opportunity to make their final public comments.
Certainly.
So that being said, again, Brett Allard with Bernstein Scher on behalf of the applicant. Here with us tonight is Scott Frankowitz, our surveyor and design expert, Steve Perna, our traffic expert, and Mike Sullivan, you can see as well with his wife. Sort of big picture, this is a less than 1,000 square foot Aroma Joe's drive-through coffee shop that we're proposing at the corner of Bow Lake Road and Route 4, a major public highway in the main commercial thoroughfare in town. And what this board is tasked with doing in terms of whether to approve or not our site plan application is to determine whether or not all the site plan regulations have been satisfied. After years of working with the board, everything has been covered and included on the plan, and we believe we have satisfied all site plan applications with regard to access, parking, design, layout, Route 4 improvements, Bow Lake Road improvements, grading, landscaping, buffers, drainage, erosion control, utilities, lighting, signage, sidewalks and pedestrian access, and traffic circulation. This plan set, our most recent plan set, is fully comprehensive, fully compliant with the site plan review regulations, and really no stone has been left unturned at this point. You've heard from numerous credible experts, our survey and design consultant, Scott Frankowitz, in connection with Kent Brown at Brown Engineering, again, our traffic impacts analysis expert, Steve Perna. His traffic impact study that we submitted into the record has been reviewed and approved by the town. It has been reviewed and approved by DOT. It has been reviewed and approved by CMA, the independent third party who was hired by the town to review it. And everyone agrees that traffic impacts are negligible. You've heard from our appraiser, Vern Gardner, that there won't be any impact to surrounding property values and that this will be a good fit for the area. We've acquired numerous state approvals throughout the process. We have a septic approval from DES from March 18th, 2020. We have a transient non-community public water system approval from DES dated February 27th, 2020. We have DOT approval for a dedicated westbound right turn lane on Route 4. And we have DOT approval to dedicate 10 feet of our land towards Route 4 for future road widening. I'd just like at this point to address some of the points that the Abutters Council made in the most recent letter that was submitted to the board. The first argument that's made in that letter is that this is an inappropriate location for this proposal and that the lot is too small. That is a zoning question. That is not a planning question. Lot dimensions and proposed mixed uses are fully compliant with zoning. This property is fully compliant with zoning. This is a permitted use on this property. And if you read New Hampshire Practice Land Use Planning and Zoning, the Laughlin book, which is sort of the Bible in New Hampshire for land use attorneys, it touches perfectly on the question of uses when you're before the planning board on site plan review. And this chapter that I'm about to read from is called Limits on Site Review. And he says, site plan review authority does not give the planning board the authority to deny a particular use simply because it does not feel that the proposed use is an appropriate use of the land. Whether the use is appropriate is a zoning question. If the planning board could deny uses it thought to be inappropriate, there would be no point in having zoning because it would afford no protection to a landowner. If the use is permitted by the zoning ordinance, which ours is, it cannot be barred by the site review process unless the use would create unusual public safety, health, or welfare concerns. There is nothing about this project that proposes or will produce public health, safety, or welfare concerns. It's a allowed use, it's a good use, and it's permitted by right. The second argument that was made is that there's an inadequate landscape buffer along Bow Lake Road. The landscape buffers and the site plan review regulations are really meant to protect people with adjoining land, not people across the street. You don't drive up and down Route 4 and see, tall fences and lots of trees and shrubs blocking properties from Route 4. Those are really meant to protect people who own land that immediately abuts the property, the commercial property in question. But even so, we have provided a combination of fencing, trees, and vegetation along a 20-foot landscape buffer along Bow Lake Road. And that's fully compliant with the site plan review regulations. The next argument is that this proposal does not fit the historic nature of the area or the character of the area. Again, this is really a zoning question. The proposed mixed use that we're offering is permitted by right. And according to the Supreme Court, in the case of Malachi Glenn Associates, permitted uses are per se reasonable. And if you look further at the Northwood ordinances, the town of Northwood favors mixed uses such as these, where you have a residence and a commercial use on the same lot. If you look at section 2 preamble of the site plan regulations, it says Northwood has buildings that contain a mix of commercial and residential uses. That's why it's a use that's permitted by right in this lot. If you look at the section 4A of the zoning ordinance, it says Because the entire town is one zoning district, the provision for mixed uses is important to maintain the character of the community as a rural New England town, to encourage economic vitality, ensure the compatibility of adjacent uses, and encourage the integration of compatible uses into the entire community. If you look at section 2C of the site plan review regulations, it says a purpose of the town's site plan review regulations is to encourage well-planned, high-quality commercial development and provide for economic opportunities for its residents. The contention that this area is a historic area, which is an argument that the abutters continue to perpetuate, is simply inaccurate. Northwood was incorporated in the late 1700s, like a lot of other towns in the state, like all New Hampshire towns. It has every single piece in town has its history. But if you think back, and I found this in my notes, at the March 12th, 2020 public hearing, right before we entered the unexpected world of COVID, there was a board member who stated during our last in-person meeting that this area is more likely to become primarily a business area in the near future, to the extent it's not already, rather than remaining or reverting to primarily single-family residential uses. I'm paraphrasing there, but that was the quote that I had in my notes. Route 4 is a major public highway in the center for commercial activity in town. This proposal is consistent with the nature of what this area is and what it will be in the future. The proposal does fit the character of the area as well. The abutter has cited the zoning ordinance in this regard. In terms of character of the area, again, that's really a zoning question. That's not really a a planning question where we're looking at technical compliance of site plan regulations for approval. It's not this job's board to apply the zoning ordinance. That's the zoning board's job. It's this board's job to apply the site plan review regulations, which we have complied with. The board really can't deny the site plan application if it believes the architecture doesn't fit the character of the area, or if the architecture doesn't jive with the character of the area. If that's the case, which we have not heard from this board at all, we would encourage the board to let us know what architectural changes would be needed to make it fit in the character of the area, because this board has a constitutional obligation to assist landowners. If you look at the cases of Carbon v. Town of Rye, Richmond v. City of Concord, the board has a constitutional obligation to assist the applicant in making a plan that does fit in the character of the area and does fit architecturally. And if there's objections to that from the board, we'd be happy to hear them, but that simply has not been the case. This is a good proposal. The architecture is good. It's a nice coffee shop and it fits in the character of the area. The abutters again rely on their Carol Ogilvie letter and their quote unquote expert that they hired for to address the character of the area, to establish that this coffee shop will alter the character of the area. And I'm going to share my screen real quick if this will work. Bear with me. This is the study area that their expert chose inside the yellow box in making the determination that this proposed coffee shop will change the character of the area. As you can see, it only catches a small sliver of Route 4 out here, and it catches mostly either vacant or residential properties back here. So if you take the study area like this, yeah, sure, it might alter the character of the area, but this study area was specifically chosen to reach the conclusion that they were trying to reach, which is that it will change the character of the area. It was reverse engineered to choose that to produce the result they were looking for. Now, if you rotate that study area, which seems to have been chosen to, for a particular purpose, you rotate it 90 degrees, here's a different study area with the same yellow box. And you are now capturing a lot more mixed uses, commercial uses than Carol Ogilvie was capturing in her study. And here you have in this box, if she were to have drawn it this way, she would have captured not just residential or vacant properties. She would have captured a church, a graveyard, construction equipment yard, telecom building, co-brown private school, a motel building, car sales, commercial parking lot, a daycare center, municipal center, and an office building. So the character of this area is not historic. It's not purely residential. This is a mixed use area. This is a commercial area, and this coffee shop fits squarely within it. The next argument that was made is that there's a lack of evidence by us regarding noise and lighting. Everyone on this board has been to a drive-through coffee shop before, and I don't need to name the franchises. We all know what they are. This is the same as that, except much smaller because there's no indoor food and beverage service at an Aroma Joe's, and much quieter because there's no loudspeaker that you order through when you do a drive-through. You place your order with the first window, you pick it up at the second window. And the planning board can rely, excuse me, the planning board can rely on its personal knowledge of certain factors in reaching its decision. That's the case of Continental Paving v. Town of Litchfield. You don't need to hear an expert from us to let you know what it sounds like when you're at a coffee shop. Everyone knows what a drive-through coffee shop sounds like. Everyone can rely on their personal experiences in making a determination about whether what we're proposing will be too loud, which it's not. In terms of the lighting, we don't believe there's any merit to the argument that our lighting will somehow be disruptive or inadequate in any way. The site plan regulations require lights, but the abutters seem to argue that we violate the site plan regs because we have lights. We hired an expert from Sharon Lighting to do the light design, and we're only proposing one safety light at night adjacent to the church property near the dumpster, which is as far away from the abutters as you can possibly get. And if you look at the lighting plan that we've submitted, you can clearly see that there is no light pollution that will possibly flow onto the abutters property. It is a very detailed plan, a well-done plan, and it makes sense for this type of property. The final argument that was made in the letter is that there's too much traffic and a lack of proper access. Mr. Pernaw's expert traffic study has been thoroughly vetted and reviewed by the town and the third-party reviewers who were hired by the town. It's undisputed that there will not be any traffic issues and that peak AM and PM traffic counts are negligible. We've demonstrated safe access. DOT has blessed the access off of Bow Lake Road, and the project is so low impact that DOT said in their letter to us, construction of a formal westbound right turn lane on Route 4 is not required as mitigation for this project. Instead, we recommend that the developer donate a 10-foot wide strip of frontage for potential future road widening. But as a belt and suspenders approach, we're doing both of these anyways. We're going to do the right turn lane at the owner's sole expense, and we're also going to donate the 10-foot wide strip. DOT also said that with regard to the access drive on Bow Lake Road, the access drive is beyond the worst case stacking scenario from the intersection. But anyways, just belt and suspenders again, we're extending the turning lanes to accommodate vehicle queues on Bow Lake Road anyways. We're also relocating the sidewalks to accommodate pedestrian access and constructing a sidewalk along the length of Bow Lake Road. So really in conclusion, Mr. Sullivan has gone above and beyond what a owner of this type of proposal needs to do to meet the site plan review regulations. He's really bent over backwards to make this work. He's provided way more than necessary for a project of this limited scope. We understand that the abutters don't like this project. We understand they don't want to see it go here, and that's their right to object to it. But we have satisfied all of the site plan regulations. There's nothing that we haven't covered and nothing that we haven't satisfied. And as I was reading through my letter that I submitted last year and then resubmitted to James just for the board's convenience, I wanted to pull out, I thought it was really telling and important to note. There was an article in 2019 regarding a large 93 apartment workforce housing project in Bedford. And one of the planning board members, after they approved it, granted site plan approval in the face of 1,100 residents opposing it. 1,100 residents opposed this workforce housing project. Planning board member Harold Newberry said, "The board can't say no because we don't like it. The board does not have the ability to deny an application simply because there is opposition to it. Rather, the board's responsibility is to make sure the site plan meets town requirements. If town planners denied the application without sufficient reason, it would likely be overturned by the courts." I think that's really a good concept to keep in mind here. This is a good plan. This is a viable plan. We've satisfied every requirement of the town site plan review regulations. Mr. Sullivan is entitled to approval of this plan. We are in agreement with all of James's proposed conditions of approval, and we ask that you approve this site plan with those conditions. And with that, I would pass it back off to the board.
Okay, thank you. questions from the board, comments from the board on what Mr. Allard said, or where anything else in specific?
I'm sorry, did you close public comment?
No, I have not opened public comment yet.
All right. So we're going to have a chance after public comment?
You can have a chance now if you would like. But I wanted to give Mr. Allard a chance to speak, or the applicant a chance to refresh us. And then I'll get my notes here. Then I'd open up public comment. If you want to wait till then, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll wait till then. I don't care to have a fist fight at this point. Yeah.
Anyone else had questions?
Bob, I have a question.
Sure.
When all the input is done and we close the public hearing, will we be able to ask staff members to research certain questions? So for example, let's say we have a question on what was said during Mr. Pernaw's testimony, 6 months ago or a year ago. And this may come up because as we discuss it, maybe we want certain details that we didn't think of right now. Is there a mechanism for us to do that? Or are we strictly on our own?
I'll let James answer that.
The reason I'm asking is because if we're strictly on our own, this is going to be a long night.
Yes.
So
Questions.
you are not entirely on your own.
Okay.
The distinction that we typically draw is that if you have procedural questions of staff, you're entitled to ask those and we can answer them. If you want things that require a staff opinion or interpretation, those are things that really should be handled during the public hearing.
What if we want something that just says, I'll just make up an example.
If you want something like, can you look up the meeting minutes of, I believe it's the one that Mr. Pernaugh presented at, it was sometime in 2019, maybe October, but I'm not sure. That sort of reporting into the record, it's something that a jury would be able to have access to the evidence in deliberation. It's something that I think would strictly be defensible if all we were limiting to was, we are finding you the information that is already in the record that is helping to refresh your memory. But I also think that, that's also going to take some time, and I would be a little concerned if you are asking us to find things, on the fly in real time, looking back through minutes. I'm not really prepared to do that tonight.
Well, no, not necessarily tonight, but when we get into our deliberations, and I'm asking because I'm a little bit also concerned that I had the implication or understanding based on some of the preliminary comments here that we need to make a decision in one night.
Not necessarily.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, Attorney Allard did submit it was an email response in writing saying that they are amenable to one additional meeting after tonight, provided the public hearing has been closed and it's a meeting for deliberation only. So at that point, because the public hearing will have been closed, I don't know that I would be comfortable with you going back to the applicant again to request another continuance for more deliberations.
Okay, so
I think the process from here on out is public hearing tonight. You can begin your deliberations tonight, but don't count on more than one more meeting after tonight.
okay.
Okay.
Hal, I guess the other thing that I would suggest is that if you are having trouble remembering exactly what was said on the record 6 months ago, and you have a specific question that you want the answer to, feel free to address it to either the applicant or to abutters who are speaking tonight.
I'm not
It is-
sure that either can answer, for example, a question that has come to my mind. No, let me just ask it now and then we'll see how it goes. So, on the traffic study, we indeed did have our engineer review it. And I sat next to the gentleman and I heard him say at least 2 times, if not 3 times, this is a failed intersection. The road study shows it's a failed intersection for the time studied. That seems to be in direct conflict with what Mr. Allard said. So I would like to go back to the record and see exactly what our consultant said, because my impression walking away from that meeting was that our engineer said the intersection is not suitable and it's getting worse as a result of this. So that's my dilemma.
Yeah, that's certainly an appropriate thing to direct to Mr. Perna.
And I have questions as traffic as well. So when we get a chance to, I'd sort of like to address topics as a whole. If we have, somebody, so I'd sort of like to say, yes, we'd like to bring up traffic. And if you have questions or comments about traffic at that point in time for Mr. Pernow or the applicant's team, that would be the time to bring it up rather than, the shotgun approach of, what about this, what about that, what about landscaping, what about, fencing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
My real question isn't necessarily that, but I mean, that's a good example of what concerns me in terms of the situation.
Okay.
Bob, I guess I do have a comment, or not a question so much.
Okay.
I just have to say that, number one, I read through the entire 129 pages that Linda sent us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. When somebody says to me that something is undisputable, I have to tell you, I immediately think this is disputable. And that's all I have to say. It's like, trust me.
Well,
Okay.
in this case, could you be specific?
The attorney said something. I just wrote that he said something undisputable. I'm sorry. There's a whole, I don't know anything that's undisputable. So when somebody says to me undisputable, my hackles just raise, my antennas raise up, and I in my mind I say, we better look at that.
Okay.
So the other thing that I would say, this board is normally very good at impartiality and playing your cards very close to your vest in terms of keeping an open mind, not expressing opinions early in the process. This is the point where it's appropriate to begin expressing some opinions. And I would suggest that if you have things where you are wavering, if you have things where you have objections, now is the time that it's appropriate to present them to the applicant, to their experts, to their team to get their response. And if they can convince you one way or the other, that will help you with your deliberations. But now is absolutely the time to bring up, I have concerns about this. I object to this design. What do you have to say?
Bob, may I say something then regarding that?
Well, I'd like.
It was going to be a suggestion. I don't want to further comment. I just,
Okay.
since this is, we're hearing
Yes.
something along the line, especially regarding the roads, that's been from my view, a overwhelming primary concern and topic. How about we jump off into that and address already the question and see what other ones. I can bring up a few questions, but I didn't want to sidestep something, but the roads seem to be on the topic or on the table.
Well, they are, but I would first like to open public comment.
Okay. Okay.
That's a different story.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'd like to open public comment so we can get that on the record. Gives the applicant a chance to develop a response if they need time to develop one. And that'll give us board members a chance to organize our own thoughts if they haven't been organized already in terms of, topic areas that we want to bring up and address. Okay. Does that sound like a plan for the board?
That's fine with me.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good. So at this time, I will open the floor for public comment. We have a few members of the public who are here. What I'd like to do is open it up to abutters, of whom I recognize at least 2 by Zoom. And what I would like you to do is, if you're at a computer, you have a camera, when it's your turn to speak, or when I open it, please turn your camera on, unmute yourself, give me a high sign, I'd like to speak kind of thing, get my attention if you're on a phone by saying hello or whatever. And I will recognize you. Please wait for the chair to recognize you before you start speaking, after you get my attention. This should not be a free-for-all, and I won't allow that. We can mute you again. Okay, at this time, I'll open it up to abutters or their representatives. Okay, Ms. Manzelli.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if the person on the phone was going to go.
Thank you for considerate of them.
Yeah. Chairman Strobel and members of the planning board, Amy Manzelli from BCM Law here on behalf of the Severance family. As I hope you have in that 129 pages somewhere, I sent in a very long letter, and I know it was a very long letter. It was important for us to get everything in there. We know we're bringing this to a close, and we wanted and we hoped that it would be helpful to you in your deliberations. I'm not going to go over most of the content of that letter tonight. I trust you all. I know that you are going to carefully consider what I wrote to you in that letter and what the Severance family themselves have written to you. Instead, I have a few planned remarks, but before I get into those, I do have a few rebuttal remarks based on the conversation so far tonight. Just to follow up on the traffic point, I can attest to the fact that traffic is disputed. The Severances dispute whether the traffic will be managed adequately. We've documented that in our letter. It's in your record. The only detail that I want to highlight for this board is the fact that there's no information in your record about how the egress and ingress to the Severance's 2 residences is going to be how the adverse impact to that is going to be solved. There is information about the adverse impact. There will be adverse impact. The people that live in the Severance's homes are going to be stuck in their driveway for a long time, not being able to get in and out. And we've raised that a number of times. So that alone is one issue that we dispute. And there's lots of others, but it's all on the record. And so I'll just leave it at that. And I think it's also disingenuous to say that everybody agrees the traffic impacts are negligible. The Severances, at least for one, do not agree that the traffic impacts are negligible. There was a lot of legal argument about, everything the Severances have to say is a zoning issue, not a planning issue. Well, with all due respect, I took great care in my letter to cite specific chapter and verse for you of the site plan review regulations that we believe this application does not satisfy. So again, I'm not going to go into the details, but it's not zoning issues that we're raising. They're planning board issues, issues that are squarely fall within your jurisdiction because they are site plan review regulation requirements that need to be satisfied in order for an applicant to be eligible to receive an approval on a site plan. Up until today, the applicant has always claimed that the small section of white vinyl fence and the couple trees that are going in will adequately screen the Severance homes. Today, the applicant's making a new argument that the Severance homes don't need to be screened from this project because they're across the street. I think the applicant has waived that argument by arguing all this time that the buffer they've put in is an adequate screen. The Carbonneau case that was mentioned and the proposition that that stands for, that you as a planning board have a duty to help applicants, generally speaking, that's true. But it really matters what is meant by help. It does not mean that you need to design an approvable project for an applicant. That's the applicant's job. You do not need to specify every which way that an applicant needs to change its project in order for you to make it approvable. That is the applicant's job, not the planning board's job. And the Carbonneau case does not say that you as the planning board have to do that. I also wanted to just mention briefly, I don't think that that image with the new yellow rectangle along Route 4 is already in your record. And I believe that the deadline for the applicant to submit new materials has also passed. And I'm not aware of Attorney Allard's qualifications as a planner. So I'm not sure what weight the planning board should give that information that was presented tonight. All right, so I'm just going to transition quickly to my planned remarks, which are not very long. So I have no surprises for you tonight. It is no surprise that the Severances have a lot at stake with respect to this application. And it is also no surprise that the Severances want you to deny this application. It's on their behalf that I am asking you tonight, and I have been asking you for these many months, to please deny this application. But what Attorney Allard said is completely correct when he was quoting from that workforce housing case. Although workforce housing has its own special statute, what he said is correct. Just because the Severances want you to deny the application doesn't give you a legally defensible basis to deny it. Plain general opposition is not enough for you to make a legally defensible denial. Not at all. What does give you enough of a basis to deny this application is your site plan review regulations, the evidence that is contained in your record, and for some parts of your laws, the absence of evidence. Your site plan review regulations are designed to protect abutting properties like the Severances, but also others. And also to protect the public safety of those traveling on the roads in Northwood, the main roads as well as the side roads, and to protect the rich historical heritage that the people of Northwood value, and to protect the character of this area. And so we have endeavored to provide you, in our final submission, a clear identification of specifically what legal requirements this application does not satisfy. It is now up to you. When the public hearing closes, as your planner mentioned, you are free from the impartiality that you must have had until this decision-making time came. And when that time is here, we hope you will find our final submission helpful for you to articulate how this application does not meet the legal requirements. And I'll close with this final plea. I think we all understand what's happening here, that your decision will be appealed no matter how you decide. So put the burden of appeal onto the applicant. Let the applicant prove to the judge why this application meets the legal requirements. Your decision, no matter what you decide, will go into the appeal with a legal presumption of correctness. So the party taking the appeal bears the burden to prove that you were wrong in your decision. So deny the application. Why not err on the side of protecting the important things that stand to be impacted if this application is approved? And then give the applicant the opportunity to prove to the judge, if he can, that you were wrong. As you know, we believe you have a record that supports denial on appeal. We respectfully request that you do deny this application. And as I close in my final remarks to this board on this application, I thank you for your attention. This is record-breaking for me, how many months this has gone on. And I really, on behalf of the Severances, we really appreciate the time you have invested in this application and the attention that you've given to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we are in public comment. If you would like to comment on this case at this time, please get my attention, either to turn on your camera, wave your hand, give me a Mr. Chair or something to that effect. I believe Mr. Hadley is on the phone.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to double check that that's who that was. Through the internet, they had you. Okay.
Yes.
There are members of the public here as well who might want to speak. But they have not gotten my attention. If you would like to do so, because you're on the phone, that presents a little bit of a higher hurdle to get my attention in a Zoom meeting. But if you would like to speak, I'll recognize you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jim Hadley. I don't really have too much to say. I did submit a letter to the board, and I tried to recapitulate what I've submitted to the board over the last several months. So I will just leave my testimony as I've written it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And with the boards and the members' appreciation, would you, Mr. Hadley, would you try to mute yourself on a Zoom meeting? I believe it is *6 that will mute you, mute a telephone, and unmute a telephone. Reason being is if we mute you or Susan mute you, it is not necessarily something we can override. We've had that problem before. But if you'd like to try it so we can see if it works, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I'll do that now.
If there are other members of the public in the meeting, if you would like to speak, now is your chance to do so. Just turn on your video camera or get my attention, please. Okay, I believe that's Ms. Brieger.
Yes, hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you. My name is Karen Brieger. I'm at Ravenwood Drive in Northwood. I have spoken publicly at numerous meetings over the lifespan of this application, and I apologize, I was not able to get something in writing before your deadline, so I wanted to just speak today. I don't have, Ms. Manzelli has all said it numerous times extremely well. I just feel it's important for you to hear from a member of the community who adamantly is in opposition of this application. It has nothing to do with being pro-business or against business in town. I'm actually very much in favor of supporting the economic development of our community and doing so in a safe and responsible manner. My concern with this application is this is not safe. This is a high traffic sort of business in a location that's not designed to support that traffic. There's already traffic issues with that particular intersection, and adding it at a greater level with that sort of coffee shop type business, it's not designed to support it. It's not safe. It's an intersection I travel every single day. My teenage children travel it every single day, as do their friends. In past meetings, many of us have talked about the activities that go on at Co-Brown after school on weekends, hosting statewide track at cross-country meets and the traffic that brings on the weekends. I sat there the other day. I was 5 cars back trying to make a left turn onto Route 4. So to the point about how the people at those 2 properties owned by the Stearns get out of their driveways, I can't imagine. And I had a hard enough time just trying to make a left. So I felt it was important, especially with members on the planning board now who weren't on the board at the past times I spoke up. I just felt it important that you hear directly from somebody from the community who lives in the area. To Ms. Manzelli's point about your responsibility to protect public safety, my concern throughout this entire process has been about public safety, and I have not seen or read anything that puts those concerns adequately to rest. And then also, I would just like to speak up as a community member too, a tax-paying community member here, to the point of appeal, to make a decision because and I'm not, and please, I'm not suggesting that anybody is doing this, but to make a decision one way or the other because you feel like it doesn't matter because it's just going to get appealed anyway. That's just not the right way. You weren't elected to this board to make decisions based on that. You were elected to the board to make decisions based on the law, based on the information provided to you. And I implore you to do that in this case. And I think over the whole course of this application, you've been presented with more than enough support from Ms. Manzelli and from others to show all the reasons why this application should in fact be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the public or abutters who would like to speak on this case? I believe we have Ellen who is joining audio, but we have other members who of the public who are on the meeting. This is public comment. This is very likely final public comment tonight. If you have something to say, now is your chance to do it. If you would like to speak, you need to unmute yourself, address the chair, or turn on your camera, wave your hand to get my attention.
I guess I'll talk, Mr. Chairman. This is Martine.
Go ahead.
I watched part of the meeting the last time where the DOT suggested some widening of the road in terms of going westbound. And I was kind of curious, I might have missed it, but it didn't seem like they had addressed or made any modifications to the eastbound traffic. And I am worried for the school too, that the turning lane will be occupied with people waiting for coffee in the morning and conflicting with teachers and students trying to park for school. So I just wanted to say that it just seemed like too congested there to put in some sort of drive-through business that will have a lot of cars, especially at that time of morning. So that was basically it.
Okay. Did you have a question as far as you wanting to know what improvements were made?
Did I miss something? Were they going to lengthen the turning lane in front of Co-Brown to accommodate additional cars trying to turn left into the Roma Joe's, or widen it, add another lane. I know that the church, the St. Anthony's, was going to give up some, some space so they could add an additional turn right into Roma Joe's, but I just didn't see anything on the other direction.
Okay, Mr. Parno, would you want to address any lengthening on the eastbound traffic of Route 4?
Was there going to be something improved
To
that? I mean,
I'll double check.
Okay.
I'd rather have the applicant speak, but to my
okay,
knowledge,
sorry. Apologies.
to my knowledge, there is nothing there.
Okay.
Now we have Mr. Parno, and I thought it might be just a matter of getting his attention.
Okay, thank you.
So the question is, are there any geometric changes to striping or lanes on New Hampshire Route 4 eastbound traffic?
The answer is no.
Yeah. Thank you. That's sort of what I thought, but I'd rather have the applicant speak to confirm it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's what I thought too, but.
Okay. Okay. Other questions, comments from the public who would like to speak? Looks like we lost Ellen again, who was trying to get in. Okay. Final chance, going once. Going twice. 2.5. Okay, at this point in time, I have closed public comment.
Is that for good now, Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
So Tim, to clarify, that will be, because at some point we need to cut it off and the applicant gets the final word, that'll be closed to public comment. That has not closed to the public hearing.
Correct.
And we would ask for a procedural motion later, once you've taken all testimony and satisfied all questions, to close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. At this time, Mr. Allard, would you like to respond to abutters, anything that was mentioned?
Yes, very briefly, just a few quick points, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Perna to address some of the traffic questions and comments that have come up from the board and the public. And then
I should say that invite was to your team.
Okay, and I'm just going to go over a few quick points, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Perna, and then Mr. Sullivan has some closing remarks that we'd like to make as well. So first, with regard to the buffer, I never said that we don't need to do a landscape buffer. We fully understand the landscape buffer requirements in the site plan review regulations, and we have satisfied them. All I was saying is that those buffering requirements are more important for an abutter who is immediately next door in terms of land touching other land and not necessarily across the street. Because like I said, when you drive up and down Route 4, you don't typically see big tree, bush, shrub, vegetation, fence buffers in between commercial properties and the street. You typically see them on the sides and the rear. That being said, we have still provided a fully compliant landscape buffer in terms of trees, fencing, vegetation, and bushes along the length of Bow Lake Road. I never meant to intend, if I didn't apply it, I don't mean to, that this board has an obligation to design our project for us. That is not what I was intending to say. It is not this board's job to design our project. That's on us. However, it is this board's job to let us know if there's something you don't like about the design, to let us know if there's something you don't like about the architecture so that we can change it and make it work. That's all I was saying. In terms of the yellow box that I showed for the relative to the Ogilvy study, that is part of the record. I showed it at a public hearing. This is being recorded. It's being included as part of the record. I'm not an expert planner, but you don't have to be an expert planner to look at what that report did and to see that that report, that study area and that report was chosen to reach a very definitive result, a predetermined result. If you take a study area and you include only residential properties because you only include Bow Lake Road, you're obviously going to reach the conclusion that a coffee shop doesn't fit the character of the area. All I did was rotate that study area 90 degrees, the same study area, to see what it would capture if you ran it up and down Route 4 instead of Bow Lake Road. You don't need to be an expert to do that, and you can clearly see that the result is different when you do. And then finally, in terms of the comment of just deny this application and let the judge figure it out, because it's better to err on the side of caution and just kick the can to the judge and deny it and see if it's supportable. That is not the right standard of review for this board. That is not a thought that should run through anyone's mind. This board has been impartial, and I'm sure you'll continue to be impartial, but it would be very improper to be of the mindset that let's just deny this so that we can send it to a judge with a presumption that we're right. This board is supposed to weigh the merits of the application against the applicable standards and make a determination about whether the site plan review regulations have been met. That is all the board is supposed to do, and that's what we're requesting that you do. And we have complied with all of those site plan review regulations. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Pernaugh to address some of the traffic items, and then we'll send it over to Mr. Sullivan for final comments.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stephen Pernaugh with Pernaugh and Company. Our office prepared the original traffic impact study dated October 22nd, 2019. And we also prepared a response to comments type memo dated January 16th, 2020. As I was listening to the testimony tonight, I did jot down some notes, and hopefully I've got them all and I can address each one. There was a mention about the CMA engineer, your engineer, talking about a failed intersection. That would be Mr. Corbett. A couple of thoughts on that. First of all, I pulled out his letter to the planning board dated February 5th, 2020. And I find nowhere in there the term failed intersection. But let me give you a little help. That could have been a reference to level of service F. And as I explained to the board and as pointed out in my report, a level of service is a categorization of delay. If you have a traffic movement that requires more than 50 seconds to make, for instance, a left turn departure, that would be assigned a level of service F, according to national guidelines or criteria, if you will. It comes out of the Highway Capacity Manual. There are many people, I am not one of them, but associates levels of service A through F to a report card back in the school days. And that's where, oh, if it's an F, it's failed. Technically, all level of service F means is an average control delay that exceeds 50 seconds. And again, that's kind of a national gradation, if you will. If you told a taxi cab driver in New York City he had to wait 51 seconds to make a left turn, he'd be tickled pink. He'd call that level of service A or B. But again, to be fair and to go by the Highway Capacity Manual, our study shows that a left turn departure from Bow Lake Road currently operates at level of service F. And the reason for that is that it's due to the fact that your highway, Route 4, has over 15,000 cars a day going back and forth. And when you have that kind of volume, the number of adequate gaps in the traffic stream to make that left turn are limited. I would go so far as to say that, well, that you shouldn't use level of service F as a litmus test for any development, because most likely half, if not 3/4 or more of all of your intersections on Route 4 in Northwood experience that same level of service F today. So it's just recognizing that there is a long delay. The second thing is that someone pointed out, correctly, that we do have an impact. And that's right, that anytime you develop a site, you're going to have an impact. When Cole Brown put their driveway in back at the end of Bull Lake Road, that created a huge impact without mitigation. In this particular case, the applicant is proposing mitigation. Number one, when you have a long delay for a left turn departure, standard traffic engineering 101 is you look at the possibility of providing 2 approach lanes. What that does is it maximizes the egress capacity of Bull Lake Road. It minimizes delays to the extent possible, and it minimizes queuing. So the applicant has gone ahead and designed and shown a widening of the Bull Lake Road approach to Route 4 on his nickel. And he's extended that all the way back to the site driveway. You can't do any better than that. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but really the only way you can hope to solve a level of service F for a left turn departure is to signalize an intersection. But you don't have enough traffic coming out of Bull Lake Road to satisfy a signal. And by the way, if the DOT ever wanted to do that, I'm sure my applicant would be smiling all the way. But it's just not something that's in the cards. The other thing about mitigation is that the applicant is proposing to put in this full right turn lane that's been discussed and has been added to the plan. That's something that should have been done by the school when they put through that driveway to Bull Lake Road. That's what created the heavy right turn movement today. So yes, this project has an impact, but he's also providing that mitigation for the town as well. And as Attorney Allard pointed out, the DOT didn't even think it was necessary. Just give us a strip of land for future widening and they're happy. But again, the town will be getting this exclusive right turn lane as a result of this project. Attorney Manzelli talked about the impact or adverse impact to the severances. And I jotted down here, they're going to be, quote, stuck in their driveway a long time, or something to that effect. That is certainly her opinion, but I can tell you it's not based on fact and it's not going to happen. A residential driveway generates on average during the morning peak hour, 1 trip, usually a departure. Most people, I would think, if they were leaving the Severance's driveway, would probably take a right out and go to Route 4. Regardless, if they went left out or right out, they're not going to be stuck in their driveway a long time. And I can say that because in our report, we looked at the delays for the proposed site driveway, which has a lot more traffic, a lot more activity than the Severance's driveway. And that intersection is going to be operating at level of service A or B. That's the highest or best level. And just to touch on that level of service F and failed intersection, again, that applies just to one movement, the left turn departure movement. If you look at the other movements involved in that analysis, when you're analyzing that intersection, is the left turn arrival movement from Route 4. That again, that's going to operate at level of service A or B. And if you look at the right turn departure movement from Bull Lake Road, that operates at level of service C in the opening year and level of service D or higher in the horizon year. So it's not like the whole intersection's failed. It's referring just to one particular movement. In terms of negligible impact, and again, I think the comment was we disagree, and that's fine. Attorney Allard was talking about the impact out on Route 4, where the net change in traffic is less than 1%. Where the real impact will be is on that short section of Bull Lake Road between Route 4 and the site driveway. We recognize that, and that's where the mitigation is being installed. And I think perhaps it was a member of the public talked about safety. about the site driveway. And, you know, when it comes down to safety, we look at three basic things: the location of a driveway, well, actually numbers of driveway. Here we have one, can't get away with any less than that. We look at location, and again, we made recommendations about pushing it back away from Route 4. That's been done. We look at the design of the intersection. We did that in our study, and we determined that you don't need right turn lanes, left turn lanes, or double exit lanes. What we determined is that that site driveway will operate fine with one approach lane on each leg of the intersection. And we recommended some pavement markings and signing. And the last thing that we always look at in terms of safety is sight distance, to make sure that vehicles leaving the coffee shop will have enough sight distance. And this has been established and documented on the plans where we have clear sight distance triangles looking both left and right. So yes, there's going to be an impact, but we're mitigating it more so than we really have to. But in the long range, I think that's a good thing. And just that last comment, eastbound traffic, again, that impact is pretty small. There's no need to change that lane configuration. There's an eastbound left turn lane, and then you've got your eastbound through lane. And that existing design is fine by, according to my information, and also the DOT has weighed in, and they don't have any problem with maintaining the existing condition. So I hope I get them all written down. Those are my responses, and I can either answer questions or turn this over to the applicant at this point.
At this point, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant. And then
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to at this point.
Yep.
Just a point of order. I know James had said that there was the possibility of reopening the public hearing, but it would have to happen tonight.
Yep.
I just received a phone call from Mrs. McNally.
Yep. And I was about, what I was going to do, Linda, to cut you off, was to let the applicant continue their final presentation. I'll use air quotes around final, because this Ms. McNally had submitted her application or her comment on June 6th, and I didn't get it till just now, where I forgot that it needed to be read into the record. I'll read it into the record. If there are any comments from the applicant, we can address them at that point in time. But I am aware that she has a comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly. Okay. Sorry about the interruption. We'll do a little two-step for a bit, but I'd rather give you the back to the floor to continue the applicant's presentation. I believe that would be Mr. Sullivan at this point in time, but I'm not going to make that guess.
Thank you.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is, Michael Sullivan, the applicant, and my wife, Christine. First off, we would like to thank the planning board for allowing citizens like us a place to bring their dreams to life. This is one of the things that makes us great as a town, that we aspire to be fair and treat everyone equally under the voted upon rules. If the project is an approved use as voted on by our citizens, which it is, and it meets all the site plan regulations voted on by our citizens, which it does, it should be approved. Every citizen deserves the same fair treatment before this board. When my wife and I bought the property on the corner of Route 4 and Bow Lake Road, which was many years ago now, I remember after we closed on the property, we were standing on the front yard shaking our heads. As we looked at each other and almost said in unison, what did we do? Well, we were young, and this rundown commercial property, complete with a house for us and our 3 children, was now our home. It took us a few weeks to take in the gravity of our purchase. We soon realized the property for years had been treated like one big dumping ground. How do people with any decency do that, we thought? You could not turn your head without seeing the discarded and abandoned remains of some business or venture. The house had been stripped of its valuable old features, especially the center fireplace. which was sad and a terrible thing. Before the winter set in, we were able to identify that there were between 7 and 8 commercially used buildings in the complex, plus the house. Some of the buildings were still standing, some half fallen. Incredibly, some just seemingly bulldozed over and carelessly buried in shallow pits. Some lay collapsed in heaps, decaying and sinking as the woods reclaimed them, contents and all. The largest of the commercially used buildings was still standing, but had been condemned altogether by the town much prior to our purchase. It was so poorly built and had become a safety issue for everyone who came near. It was pretty easy to see why this commercial property had been listed on the real estate market for so long, almost 7 years on the market, with not a single soul wanting it. The following spring, our family of 5 worked together and helped clean up this huge mess left behind. It took us almost 3 years to rid everything from this commercial site, which was strewn everywhere. What a great property this was, we thought, when we finally started to make headway. It would be worth it, we thought. And someday we were going to open our own family business right here as we are ready to retire. Now many years have passed, our children have grown, and we have worked hard and saved every penny. Now it's time to start our own family business, much like the Abutters family did when they owned this property. To be clear, the Abutters located their commercial business here on this property because this property is situated in a heavy commercial area along busy Route 4. This has never changed. The idea that this commercially used property has somehow magically become a quiet residential area full of historic homes is absolutely ridiculous on its face. It is the abutters' own past actions that have made this property the commercial site it is today. It's ironic that when CBNA, Co-Brown, wanted to put in Academy Way, this same abutter made the same claims that their property would lose all of its value and forever ruin the community with the approval of a new road. The written testimony by the abutter is all part of the files of record at the town hall. Aroma Joe's is a great business to serve the needs of the community and its citizens. Most Aroma Joe's are individually owned and operated by people just like us, small families that live in the communities they serve. Our town is covered with chain and franchise stores, True Value, Mobile, Dunkin' Donuts, Hannaford's, Irving, Family Dollar, Northeast Credit Union, TD Bank, Shell, Sparebox Storage, the list just goes on. These businesses provide incomes for the citizens of our town. As you can see from our plans, our building is well designed and aesthetically pleasing with many architectural details, much more than the average coffee shop. Like all Aroma Joe's buildings, our building has a very small footprint. The reason is because these owner-operated businesses do a fraction of what other coffee shops do. For example, compared to Dunkin' Donuts, that documented number is 40%. The coffee and drink products are very well liked, and people from within our own community enjoy the great and friendly face-to-face ordering of drinks, food, and the positive atmosphere and energy that this brings to their lives. We can all agree it certainly would be a nice place to stop, relax, and walk around with your freshly made custom coffee or specialty drink. Also, people like working at Aroma Joe's, and we offer a great full hourly pay, plus the opportunity to make great tips with great service, which is hard to find at many jobs in our area. Often, workers love the product so much, some look to open their own small Aroma Joe's businesses themselves. This is also a big tax benefit to the town through property taxes, without the heavy and costly demand on services in the school system. Clearly, there is a need for this business and products in our community, and that this need is not currently being met. We listened closely to the input from the public and the multiple traffic engineers involved. We finally came to the conclusion that we were the only ones in a position to fix the existing issue with turning off Route 4 in the Bow Lake Road approach. To make the intersection in our community safer, we had to step up and give up part of our own land and invest heavily in our neighborhood. Not because we were obligated to do so, by impact or otherwise. We were doing this because we wanted our community to be a safer, better place. And more importantly, we wanted to give back to the community we live in. This is the reason the Catholic Church next door supports this project and has committed to giving up part of their land for the betterment of the community. It remains uncontested by the town's engineer, New Hampshire DOT traffic engineer, so the town's traffic engineer, New Hampshire DOT's traffic engineer, and the abutters traffic engineer, that our known impact on the busiest hour of the worst day of the year is 22 vehicles. Again, that is 22 vehicles in the busiest hour of the day. This is supported by factual vehicle counts at other Aroma Joe's locations. To put that in perspective, 22 vehicles over the course of the hour from 7 to 8 a.m. means one additional vehicle every 3 minutes. The standard difference of traffic from one day to the next varies more than our entire impact. In fact, after review by New Hampshire DOT, their traffic engineers decided and notified the town multiple times in writing that our impact is minimal enough that us giving New Hampshire DOT a small right-of-way out front would be appropriate and would wholly mitigate our impact by our proposed family business. The fact is, the intersection will be safer after the project goes through than it is now, and at zero expense to the town and the taxpayers. In conclusion, we ask that the board consider that my family has invested a lot of money meeting at all the site plan regulations and requirements as voted on by the citizens of our town. In addition, our proposed use is an approved use as voted on by the citizens of our town. We are not asking for any waivers. We are asking for your approval. Thank you to the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Allard, is that the anything else you want to respond to as far as your I'll say almost final presentation?
I think we're good with our presentations, but we're happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Okay. What I'll do now is we received an email from a public comment. It came into the town. It just was not brought to my attention until just now. So I would like to read it into the record as per their request. They did meet the deadline time frame. So I'll read that into the record. There are some questions in it, and we'll give the applicant a chance to respond. Okay. Dated Sunday, June 6, 2021 at 8:02 a.m. Dear Chairman Strobel and Planning Board members, we previously submitted public comments regarding the dangerous intersection of Route 4 and Bow Lake Road. We request that they be included at the June 10th meeting. Additionally, series of questions, should this project be approved with the changes to the right-hand turning lane onto Bow Lake Road, would those changes need to be completed at the applicant's expense prior to construction of the Aroma Joe's building? Question 2, should the proposed greenhouse, since the proposed greenhouse presently does not have an occupancy permit, will one be required prior to opening it for sales? Question 3, the requirement of a sidewalk along Bow Lake Road will offer some protection for pedestrian traffic. Are there plans to protect people crossing Bow Lake Road, i.e. crosswalk, to access Aroma Joe's? Question 4, NHDOT was asked to provide a plan for the right turn lane. Were they asked to address the dangerous left-hand turns from east or west that would necessitate vehicles crossing over travel lanes, i.e. left-hand turns when exiting Bow Lake Road and left-hand turns from Route 4 onto Bow Lake Road? Thank you. Sincerely, Dan and Kate McNally. Okay. At this time, because I've read that, I will again close public comment. And I think what I can do, because those were questions pertaining to largely to traffic. I'm going to see if we can roll those into board member questions. If the board if that meets with approval from the board and or town staff. The request is to read the letter into the record, but I'll give a chance to, because it deals a lot with traffic, and I know myself, I have questions involving traffic. I'll see if I can roll them in.
Yeah, I think that would be perfectly appropriate to use that as a transition point to traffic questions by the board. Okay. I think that I can respond to one of those from the town's perspective, and the question, I believe, was in relation to when the installation of the right turn lane would be required. I have stipulated in my proposed conditions of approval that construction on the road improvements could happen simultaneously with construction of the proposed building. However, I do also have, prior to the signing of plans, a recommended condition that the applicant be required to meet with the Board of Selectmen or their designee, which is typically the town engineer, to discuss any required performance guarantees, in short, a bond for required improvements. And I would expect that installation of the right turn lane and the other road widening things would be things that would feature prominently in that bonding. And so therefore, if there are any concerns about, well, if they can build their building at the same time, what happens if they stop constructing the right turn lane? The answer is we call the bond and we can finish it with their money that they put up as a performance guarantee.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that, James. Okay. We've closed public comment. Now is the chance for the board to express concerns, ask questions. I would like to, I have a couple of my own, some of which are might be fairly straightforward, but and I'm going to take chair's prerogative to start. As far as topics go, I'd like to address the vegetative buffer and or the fence. I've driven past multiple times. The existing fence, if you want to look at it, it's the final plan set sheet 11. The existing fence that I guess abuts or adjoins the existing house and runs along the backyard, courtyard, whatever, toward the proposed driveway. There was a question of that way back on the abutters as far as the material of that. I did look, it appears to be vinyl, which is not in our recommended or suggested materials for fences. And I was curious as to whether that existing fence is staying as is, and if the newly proposed fence, which is on the north side of the driveway, what the material is for that.
So I can ask Scott Frankowitz to reply to that.
Scott Frankowitz here from New Hampshire Land Consultants. The proposed is a 6-foot vinyl. That's what we believed was in the regulations that allowed as a 6-foot vinyl, but we can make that whatever is allowed. And for the existing fence, Mike would have to answer that question, as I'm not 100% sure.
So we would certainly be willing to match the new fence with, and remove the existing fence and put a new fence in that matches the proposed fencing that's being installed.
Okay. I'm just going to read the existing site plan regs from 2011, section 9, B, architectural review. Reading this, trying to get through all the numericals. So it's 9B4, architectural design standards for major and minor site plans. Item E, as in Edward, is fencing. Fences for non-security purposes shall be constructed of or replicate traditional New England material, parentheses, i.e. picket, split rail, wrought iron, brick, stone. Chain link security fences may be allowed where appropriate, but their use is generally discouraged. Refer to section 9K for landscaping. Okay, just bringing that up there. If you're looking to match, that's what I had expected. But I believe the existing is appears to my eye, but is vinyl.
I would agree with that. It is.
Thanks.
Bob, for clarification.
Yep, go ahead.
This is Joe. Just regarding what you read, and I don't have that before me, the reference to it, but you went through several materials.
Yep.
There wasn't in that a prohibition of vinyl, or even a mention of vinyl. So how is it? What is the interpretation that's coming out of that? I have a separate observation on that, but go ahead and tell me what that answer is, if you can.
Well, I'm reading it. It's fences. Fencing for non-security purposes shall be constructed of or replicate traditional New England material, i.e. picket, split rail, wrought iron, brick, stone. Chain link security fences may be allowed where appropriate, but their use is generally discouraged. I agree. I'm not casting a decision or indicating anything that was of my own preference or not. It was more a question that was brought up by an abutter from minutes of, I'd have to look up when, as to, questioning about the security, the fencing, and the material was not listed on the blueprints.
All right. My only thought about that, or not, my thought about it is that I'm not a fan of vinyl, so it's a personal observation. On the other hand, I'm aware that over the past decade, vinyl fences, in many cases, have become superior in appearance and construction than many of the traditional. You can not like them or like them. They last longer usually than many wood fences. So there's a few elements there which just throw a bit of sand into the ointment. But it's, I'm just first observing what I did, that there isn't a prohibition against vinyl. Some vinyl can really look crummy, but I've seen wood fences and metal fences that would also satisfy the word crummy. I guess it's a matter of some aesthetic standard that might be applied. Now, having said that, I also, and I don't know if this changed and I am now overlooking it, the plans, the kind of, what would it be, a computer generated aerial side look at the property showed vegetation of a couple of kinds along that fence line, I think, that we're talking about.
Yep.
So that in part the fencing would be almost secondary or at least partially obscured. So is that vegetation still going to be there? Or is that part of the current presentation? And I'm talking about the vegetation that was shown to extend kind of along the greenhouse and then up to the driveway.
So north of the driveway.
Yes.
Further along, further from Bow Lake Road past the driveway on Bow Lake Road on the right.
Right.
Beyond the driveway, beyond being away from Route 4.
Yes, so I'm just wondering, is that vegetation still part of the plan, or is it just now the fencing?
No, it is shown on the plans as, somebody can jump in, but provide various hardwood trees, white oak and sugar maples at 35 feet apart, not to exceed 40 feet from center to center. Typically proposed trees to meet 20-foot landscaping buffer requirements per town of Northwood. See sidewalk plan for landscaping in this area.
I saw a little evergreen there, or what appeared to be. Now I'm making, I'm judging what do you want to say, a synthetic drawing as a, I'm not looking at a site plan that's specifying vegetation. I'm just looking at that visual presentation. So I see evergreen and deciduous. That's what I'm judging there, and I'm just taking away that as part of the buffer along with the fence. I'm just wondering, that's still all in play? Is that what I'm understanding?
It's shown on the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just comment that in terms of the fence, we can certainly do whatever the board would like. And since the plans sort of are what they are at this point, the board could always condition its approval on changing the fence as on the plan.
Thoughts from the board?
How
I was going to encourage Hal to ask his question.
Go ahead, Al.
how do we deal with these changes on the fly, Bob?
As far as, what do you mean?
Well, like
potentially changing the fence material?
things like that, yeah.
That to me would be a decision by the board to make it and put it as a conditional of approval. But I haven't gotten a head nod from James on that. But I think that would
Yeah, I have a placeholder. I did not have any specific changes to the plan set that I'm requesting. But if there are subsequent changes, for example, label the proposed fence as wood or as split rail instead of vinyl, I can keep a running total if that's what the board would like to request as changes to the plan. My one suggestion would be, if you are requesting any further changes, that we get that list prior to closing the public hearing, so we can at least confirm acceptance or acknowledgement by the applicant.
Okay. I'll add slightly to that list in that the sheet 11, which is the landscaping plan, does show let me double check here. An existing fence, or the existing fence and the fence north of the driveway on Long Bull Lake Road. The landscaping plan for the grading and landscaping plan for the proposed sidewalk does not show the fence north of the driveway along the existing greenhouse. Probably just an oversight, which is fine, but I'm just wanted to point, if we're looking at.
Sorry, Bob, what sheet was that?
So the sheet 11 shows a fence along the greenhouse north of the driveway. Sheet 7 does not show that same fence. Both are, one is sheet 11 is the overall landscape plan. Sheet 7 is the sidewalk grading and landscaping plan. Probably just a layer was turned off, which is fine. It's just more to be consistent.
We'll make sure that's shown on all the
Yep.
sheets.
That's fine. I mainly, because the sidewalk was changed multiple times, I just wanted to be clear in that there was a fence going up in that location. While we're talking about it, any thoughts on the material of the fence? Okay, just wanted to double check. Okay.
Bob, I do have a question related to the buffering. I just want to make
Go ahead. Sure, now's the time to bring it up.
So, is required, and is the choice either a 20-foot buffer or a fence?
I would,
And then the related question is a butter defined differently depending on where they're located?
What do you mean?
We send out a list to abutters.
Yes.
Is there a different definition of a butter other than that one?
I think that the commonly conceived definition of the term abutter is people who directly abut or directly across the street are adjacent to. I think that might be compounded in some zoning ordinances where they add a notice buffer. But I would say that since we do not do that, we don't deal with that problem. But in terms of notice, certainly people who, for example, whose property would meet at the center line of a road, we notice as abutters.
Well, the reason I'm asking is there was, at least I thought there was being some distinction as to being made, butters immediately adjacent versus butters across the street versus the butters diagonally across and so on. So I want to be real clear. Is there any difference in the definition of butters?
By the way, I heard that too. It wasn't just you, Hal.
I think I can clarify. I agree that the severances are abutters. It wasn't my intention to say that they aren't. The only point I was making is if you drive up and down Route 4, you don't typically see landscape buffers facing the road to buffer from properties on the other side of the road. But we have provided. I'm
just going to give as an example, Mr. Daco, who has his very nice stone wall, vegetation, and trees planted every 40 feet. That faces out onto Route 4 across to the other side. So that's part of what's confusing me.
Sure, and I was speaking more generally, but I think regardless, the point I was making was we have provided the landscape buffer. It's there. You can see on the plan the fence, the trees, the shrubs, everything. So to the extent that I cause any confusion about who's in a butter and who's not, that wasn't my intention. If you look at the plan, the landscape buffer is what it is, and it's a good plan, and we've provided the buffering to protect the abutters, the severances across the street.
And Hal, just because I'm familiar with that site plan, there is a difference between vegetative buffers and street trees. We define them differently. In that street trees are what Mr. Daco has in front of his operation further down. And they are to beautify the edge of the road, not necessarily provide a vegetative buffer.
So Hal, if I can direct you to a section of the code, the required improvements. So this is in the Northwood site plan regulations, major site plan landscaping requirements. So it should be Roman 9, section K 1, 2. That's really bad numeration if we've got K.1 parens 2. No, where did it go? I had it. And I was looking for the.
Are you in zoning and you're in?
No, I'm in the site plan regulations. Okay. On page 47, K.1 parens 3 required improvements. Number A, a landscaped area serving as a buffer zone shall be required wherever a commercial or industrial development abuts an adjacent residential property. So that is what we're talking about. A buffer zone shall be required. Then if you go down to K.1 parens 4A, that is entitled buffer zone requirements. And it lays out a set of requirements in that section. So I would say K.1 parens 3A tells you when a buffer zone is required. K.1 parens 4A tells you what is required of that buffer zone.
And if you're not looking at or don't have it immediate, the one is a buffer zone shall consist of a strip of land at least 20 feet wide, densely planted, details, or a wall, barrier, or fence of uniform appearance 6 feet high and extending to within 6 inches of the ground level.
Yeah, but there's a part there, and this is where I'm confused about it, because there's a part that says the fence can be used in conjunction with plant material. So this is really twisting my underwear up, so to speak.
Well, the applicant has done both, fencing and trees. Yeah, if you're looking at K14B, for all landscaping areas, shade trees shall be planted at intervals no more than 40 feet apart, and shrubs, perennials, and ground cover shall be planted in mass among the trees. Combinations of evergreen and deciduous plantings are encouraged. A wall, barrier, or fence of uniform appearance 6 feet high and extending to within 6 inches of ground level may be used in conjunction with plant materials. All buffer areas are to be maintained as an integral part of the landscape.
Okay, so that all needs to be within the 20 feet buffer zone?
Yes, that's my understanding of it, yeah, because it's defining the buffer zone requirements in the section before it. And looking at the plan, at least, so between the existing house and the driveway and north of the driveway along the greenhouse, there are large trees and smaller trees, 24-inch tree, 14-inch tree, a 16-inch tree, and a fence and a stone wall, at least behind the house, and a fence and large trees beforehand. And looking, if I recall the fence correctly, the fence is fairly opaque as far as visual goes along the length of it. So it's not like a split rail kind of thing where you're given essentially you can see right through it. It appears by my eye, and maybe Mr. Sullivan can correct me, that it's vertical slats stacked so you have a lot of privacy on the back of the house.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay. And that is the intent to match that same behind the greenhouse?
That's correct.
Okay. So just for speaking strictly for myself, that to me meets the intent of the vegetative buffer to provide privacy on both sides of the fence, but not have necessarily a mass of fencing material along the wall. Um,
Just Bob, could you
Go ahead, Joe.
clarify what your, I do have some plans I'm looking at. I don't know what you're looking at, and that doesn't necessarily make it the worse, but just your last comment, you referred along the wall. What were you thinking just as you're saying that? I mean, there's fencing showing along the small parking lot that's in front of the greenhouse, along the and along the drive.
In specific, I'm looking at the fencing that goes along Bow Lake Road.
Okay. Yeah. So along the small parking lot in the back, it sits in front of the greenhouse, sits along the drive. There is a fencing shown.
Yes.
And I may not have it. I don't. Maybe it's just this plan. I referred to vegetation that was showing from a synthetic aerial view.
Okay.
Generated by.
Oh yes.
The survey, and yet what I see is the fencing. I see some vegetation. I don't see the specific vegetation layout. I don't know if maybe it's just I'm looking on a wrong page or if that was added. I think
I believe
I'm looking at the last generation site plan.
I was gonna say, I think that's an old site plan if that was included with that color printout. I think that was way back in the.
No. Yes, no. You're right.
Yeah.
I had pulled that color printout from previous. I do have the recent site plan, at least the one that we got.
Yeah, just
June. No, I don't know what it was actually.
June 3rd is the date.
Well, June 3rd is the
3rd, 2020.
The original.
Yes.
Right, but I made a note on this. I have about 4 plans here, and one of them says this is the latest sidewalk plan. So the truth is, I do not. The reason I'm trying to clarify this is I don't know if I'm looking at something that's the most up to date. I've got the picture of what's going on, but I wanted to know if vegetation originally represented and then a fence, which came along later, as I remember, are both simultaneously being utilized as a buffer along that parking, that small parking lot that shows along the driveway. I'm calling it in front of the greenhouse.
Yes.
But what I am talking about is that fence and/or vegetation that would be paralleling, running along Bow Lake Road.
Yes, both are shown.
Okay.
Existing trees, in fact, that's pointed out, existing trees and vegetation to remain to maintain a 20-foot buffer to the between Bow Lake Road and the greenhouse parking lot, if we can call it that. And the applicant has said that, well, he commented there that the vegetation is going to remain.
All right. Well, that clarifies that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to request that Hal follow up on his earlier concern he had about that intersection and the traffic report. I'd like to hear that pursued in the light of we've heard some clarification on it from Mr. Pernow. I'd like to hear what Hal's he was trying to frame a concern about that level 7, I think it was, or whatever we're calling it.
LOSF.
F, I'm sorry, F. Not quite.
I'm willing to do that. But I would like to take a 5-minute break first.
Yeah.
Because I need some.
Thank you.
Moved.
Okay. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll be back at 8:30. Okay. Two, three. Okay, I guess everybody, Joe is back and unmuted. Okay, why don't we get back into business with probably the biggest topic or a number of questions is traffic. Hal, you had one you're trying to develop earlier, so why don't you go ahead if you're ready.
Okay. I guess since we aren't going to be getting additional input after this, I'm going to ask some fairly detailed questions.
That's fine. That's what this is for.
So, left-hand turn wait time before and after the project at the extended time frame. So
just to be clear, because I have the same topics, so we're in conjunction here. You're talking exiting the driveway from the site, traveling
talking about
south on Bow Lake Road, and then turning left onto Route 4.
I'm talking about on Bow Lake Road, turning left on Route 4.
Okay, eastbound on Route 4. Okay, just wanted to double check. Yep.
So there was the before, and then I guess we can skip right to, Mr. Purnell did 2 different time intervals. One was, immediately, and then one was, I don't know, so many years later or something. Let's just skip to the 2 extremes. What's the wait time in those both cases?
So are you referring to the year 2030, the long range, or the opening year 2020?
I guess I wasn't ready for that question. I remember seeing a chart.
Are you looking? What are you looking at, Hal? The average? How long during rush? There was a appendix. I might have it right here.
There was a chart that showed, at let's say 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. Currently, people wait up to a maximum of so many minutes.
The delay chart. Okay, so that is in the traffic study. I believe it's Appendix E. Nope, Appendix F, as in Frank.
Okay.
And it's US Bow Lake Road left turn departure survey date, because I had the same question. Tuesday, September 10th, 2019, during the morning peak hour, and it lists the go ahead. Number of cars, arrival time, departure time, delay for 60 vehicles.
I'm sorry?
I have it as the graph essentially is, or the data is essentially how many vehicles come in. There were a total of 60 in that hour from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. Sorry. The arrival time, the departure time, and then how long and the calculated delay.
The calculated delay, please.
Okay. So the calculated delay over the average is 45 seconds. The minimum is 1 second. The maximum is 2 minutes and 37 seconds.
And then,
Chairman, where are you reading that?
This is your October 2019 proposed traffic study, traffic impact assessment. There's no page number, but it's it's in Appendix F after the synchro reports.
And then what's after the build and at whatever it is, 2030, I guess, is what Mr. Purnell used.
That's a different point.
Oh, 1 second, I want to
Yep.
go to my Appendix F to see what the chairman is looking at.
Sure.
After
Take your time.
synchro.
Just after, it's the next page after the synchro reports in Appendix F.
And what was the minimum of 1 second, the maximum of 2 minutes, 37 seconds.
Correct. That whole 60 vehicles entering for the hour.
Correct.
Arrival time, departure time, and delay.
Right, those were left turn departures we're talking about
Correct.
only.
Yep.
Correct. And and just to double check, that is left turning traffic exiting Bow Lake Road onto Route 4 eastbound.
Correct.
Okay.
What was the after build 2030? Same.
See, that,
So-
I don't, that doesn't include that, but go ahead, Mr. Bruno.
All right, let me explain. In the original report, we published a table 3, I believe it was, on page 18 that showed a couple of different ways of analyzing the intersection, specifically that left turn departure. And you can tell that the numbers using our 2 methodologies were wide apart. So what we elected to do is to, on September 10th, go out and measure every single vehicle taking a left out. That's what you see in Appendix F. And you're right, the minimum was 1 second. That's somebody who comes up, rolls to a stop, looks left, looks right, and then just goes, like virtually no delay. And one person had to wait as long as 2 minutes and 37 seconds. We conducted this supplemental survey, and where we determined the actual delay was 45 seconds if you average it. And you can tell the highway capacity manual methodology that was used originally was 106 seconds. So it wasn't even close. The highway capacity manual wasn't even close in modeling the delays we observed out in the field. For that reason, we, in our January 16th memorandum, published a supplemental table called 3S. And again, this was using a different model, but the good news is that it said our delay for 2019 was 46 seconds. Very, very close to the 45. So this third methodology, if you will, did the best job. I believe I'm sorry for calling you by your first name, Hal, but I don't see your last name on the screen.
Okay.
I think what Hal is asking is what is going to be the change in the delay?
Yes.
And table 3S is your, I think is the best table to look at. And I'm now thumbing back to my no build and build numbers. So that left turn departure movement in the morning peak hour, 7 to 8, without the development at 63 cars, it's going to go to 88, sorry, it's going to go to 81 cars. 63 goes to 81. What the model says is that that's going to increase the delay by approximately 47 seconds.
So let me clarify that.
What year is that now? That immediately after build or after 2030?
You have to have table 3S in front of you or else you won't follow my numbers.
I'm trying to find that table 3S and I'm not seeing it in my email.
I'm trying to avoid that, but I guess maybe I'll have to go get it or find it. Well, I'm not going to be able to do it electronically. I'm sorry. So
Anyway, I'll explain it the best I can. It's January 16th, and this was our response to comments to CMA's review.
Right.
And we also addressed the DOT comment. But anyway, so the answer to your question is, and I'm going to round off numbers.
yeah,
Opening year, no build morning, it goes from 57 seconds to 104 seconds, or an additional 47. Morning peak hour.
and then in future year,
In the year 2030, it goes up by 38 seconds.
That's in addition to
That's the delta. That's the increase in delay.
increase over the current delay.
Now, Hal asked about the year 2030.
Right. No, that's what I'm asking. And that increase in delay is between 2020 and 2030?
No,
Or-
20 no build and 2030 build.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So without seeing it myself, the difference is for no build between 2020 and 2030 is an increase in 47 seconds, and with the build, it is an increase of 38 seconds.
Nope, close.
Okay.
2020,
So for those of you who have access to your computer,
Yeah,
this is the January 22nd, 2020 memo, correct, Mr. Perna?
January 16th memo, 2020.
It's probably the same. The file itself says the 22nd, but I can't imagine you did 2 traffic response memos in a week.
Not for the same client.
That
Okay, I
should be, yes, I see the date in the file now is January 16th. So that should all be in your inboxes for those of you who have email access to look along.
So,
which one is that, James? What date?
The file itself says January 22nd, but if you open it, the cover page says January 16th.
And you emailed it what day?
3 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Wasn't.
So, Mr. Chairman, that first comparison was 2020, no build versus build, 47 seconds.
Yep.
The second one was the 2030, no build to build, 38 seconds.
Just as a, can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, James. Or go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, to Mr. Pernow, obviously, well, as I'm hearing it, we have a drop from what, 47 to 38 going into the future, build, no build. It appears as though from one way of looking at it, is actually getting better into the future. Now, I realize this is just a projection, but how does that anomaly occur when I don't know, the traffic volume on the highway Route 4, I assume, is going to increase in some fashion, or at least there must be some kind of projection there. So, I mean, just could you clarify that for me, if you could, that little glitch in the dropping, the difference dropping, the difference number dropping in the quantity there?
Joe, I have to say, we are not looking at the same table.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at any table. I'm trying to follow what you said. I'm only hearing the words right now. I'm sorry. And that may be where the problem is.
Listen to what I'm reading, and then Mr. Pernow can tell us if it's different.
Okay.
Bow Lake Road left turn departures. 2019 existing, delay is 46 seconds. 2020 build, delay is 104 seconds. 2030 build is 191.8 seconds. So it goes from 46 to 104 to 192.
Yep.
And the PM goes from 34 to 50 to 88.
I'd like, can I just jump in for a second?
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm looking at, I have one computer monitor, I'm looking at, or a couple going on, I'm looking all over the place. So, go ahead, yes.
Okay, so again, this methodology is based on a macroscopic simulation model. And this is a pretty high-tech methodology, if you will. And I, as a traffic engineer, and it's stated in the highway capacity manual, a little note of caution. And that caution goes something like this, that when the volume capacity ratio, that's the second column over, approaches 1.0, the delay estimates start to become inaccurate. And again, that's because of the algorithms that are in the software, in the model, that it does a good job when you're below capacity, but when you're over capacity, there's that cautionary note. And again, it's just because of the algorithms that exist today. So that's why, I think what's reasonable would be to use the delta, not the actual magnitude, because these numbers in theory are, over capacity. And again, just to explain that, this analysis is based on a peak month condition. So that happens, 1 month out of the year. All the 11 months will be better. It's based on the morning peak hour, 7 to 8. And it's also based on the peak 15 interval within that hour. For instance, it could be 7:15 to 7:30 or 7:45 to 8. So what we do when we run this analysis is we take that highest 15-minute volume and multiply it times 4 to come up with an equivalent hourly volume. So I just caution you, when you look at these model results, you have to use engineering judgment in interpreting them. And, I think that the delta of 47 seconds, that's the difference between no build and build, is reasonable. Again, we're over capacity during that 15-minute period, during a peak month, in the morning peak hour, but that's the ballpark. If you look at the fourth column over, vehicle queuing, it shows that the 95th percentile queue is going to increase from 4 vehicles to 7. Again, theoretical numbers, but what the model is telling us is 3 additional cars in that 95th percentile queue.
Yeah, I guess the question for me, Bob, is who's got responsibility for these numbers being right?
That would be Mr. Burnoff.
So if it's wrong and we turn out with more wait time or more cars, what's the town's recourse?
Hal, at that point in the future, this isn't something that we would determine compliance with their site plan if the projections turned out to be wrong. You are tasked.
Who's on the hook for ultimately what happens with the traffic?
A combination, if traffic changes, either if it changes as a result of a future specific proposal, you could tie it to that future specific proposal in that review. If it just happens as a result of general factors, a combination of the town and the state.
Hal, I'm not clear here. Could you, the what if scenario is troubling me. There's obviously lots of what if possibilities. It seems, I mean, first of all, we're in a position of having to go on what is considered certifiable, reliable engineering advice. And we've gone to the trouble to have that verified by our own outside party, CMA. The state also came in on this, DOT. I am not sure where we go by saying what if. You could make up 50 different scenarios on that basis. But I mean, if I knew what the traffic was going to be like on that road 20 years from now, maybe less. It's conceivable, but population actually in certain categories is dropping. I know people are moving up here right now from Massachusetts and a few places, but that's going to terminate at some point. I don't know what the future is, and neither do you, and neither does anybody else. But what I'm concerned about here is we have to take, if you don't think Mr. Purnell is a reliable source, then so be it. If the others involved here are not reliable sources, then so be it. But we have to make a case for that. What I'm seeing is we have certain numbers. I think Mr. Purnell has attempted to explain it. I'm at a little trouble here where I don't have his original study right in front of me because I've misplaced it, but that's my own doing. In any case, I think I'm following what he's making as a point, but you were interjecting that what if? Well, what if anything? I think we have to rely on engineering advice that we're getting that is reliable as you, I, or anybody else on the board possibly knows. So either we go with it or we start over again. I'm not quite sure where this goes.
Well, let me just say it this way. So for example, if on day one, the traffic is triple what Mr. Pernow estimates, we have to live with that. And that's exactly what we've heard the public say. This is a bad intersection. Why are you making it worse? And I'm trying to understand just what our risk is in terms of making it worse. And yes, maybe in the future it's one thing, but I'm concerned primarily about the initial delta, which is immediately after build. And if it's 3 times worse, and there's problems with traffic, there's problems with accidents and stuff as a result, I'm not going to feel very good. And so I want to know if the numbers, let's just say on day one after opening, are 3 times, and the town is in an uproar and says, you got to do something. What do we do? And I want to understand clearly what our risks are.
So Hal, can I reframe that a little bit? Because I don't think that you're quite approaching things in the way that I would approach them. So the short answer is that the applicant is supposed to give you, the reasonably reliable best information that they can to make a decision. And once you make that decision, the best, most reasonable guess in the world has served its purpose. And if real results turn out to be something different, that's nobody's fault. Everybody did what they were supposed to in terms of coming up with the best, most reasonable information available at the time. So what I would suggest in framing this issue is that we have sections in the site plan regulations that require, among other things, safe and suitable site access. Right. So what I would encourage you to think about instead is, are the changes between the no build scenario and the build scenario that you're seeing, the we do nothing and traffic goes up, or we add this Aroma Joe's and traffic goes up a little bit more as a result? Do those things either trigger unsafe or unsuitable conditions? And if they do trigger, in your mind, unsafe or unsuitable conditions, do the remedies that the applicant is proposing, the right turn lane, widening and restriping on Bow Lake Road, effectively mitigate those unsafe and unsuitable conditions so they become safe and suitable again?
Okay, so let's stick with that last point and ask Mr. Pernow, what numbers change as a result of these road improvements that the applicant is suggesting?
Well, I think the answer that I'm going to point out to you is on table 3S. But before I do that, give me 60 seconds here. The question was, what are we going to do if these numbers are wrong? All right. The answer is every single day, because traffic is random and dynamic, every single day, the delay taking a left out of Bow Lake Road is different. This is not something that's etched in stone. So every day it's going to change. Somebody, pointed out, well, what if? We had to assume a background growth rate. We assumed 1% per year. That is a standard assumption that we use in New Hampshire. If you look at the most recent DOT data, traffic on Route 4 has gone down. Well, it's gone down because of the pandemic. So hopefully that's going to come back. But, all we can do is use reasonable assumptions and use various models to come up with things. The other thing about, you say, what if Bernard get it all wrong? What are we going to do? The numbers are a means to the end. When I look at table 3S, I look at our projections, I come up with a conclusion that because stacking is going to become longer, that Bow Lake Road ought to be widened to have 2 exit lanes that run further back. That's the meat and potatoes. That's what the planning board should be looking for. You cannot, if my numbers are so off, they would never tell you to make it a 3-lane approach. You can't do that. All you can do is left and right. So common sense says that we're doing the best we can with Bow Lake Road. And as I mentioned before, the only other mitigation that's going to help you with delays is to put a traffic signal in there. You can only do that if you meet the published warrants and the manual on uniform traffic control devices. The DOT generally is reluctant to put in signals unless they absolutely are needed, because their thought process is Route 4 is supposed to carry through traffic from point A to point B. That's their priority. So again, you'd have to have enough traffic to meet one of the signal warrants. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. So I think my point to the board is, by requiring the applicant to make this offsite improvement, you are getting the most you can in terms of traffic mitigation for this left turn delay thing. And by lengthening the 2 lanes, you're getting more stacking. This is how a development mitigates its impact. If the board approves a subdivision further up Bow Lake Road, that's going to have an impact. But guess what? You're not going to do anything about it because you've already got 2 exit lanes and it's already been lengthened. So it's not something that, you can always mitigate every impact. The important thing to me is that this applicant is mitigating the impact of his additional traffic. About 20 lefts out, about 20 rights out during that worst case peak hour. The last thing I wanted to point you to those that have table 3S, if you go back to the model, and whoever said 46 seconds existing goes to 104, correct? And then in 2030, it went to 192. I want you to look at the number right above it. 2030, no build. If there's no coffee shop here, the delay is going to be 154. And that's, again, if the mitigation was in place. If the donut shop doesn't happen, then you don't get that mitigation. My point is that this table tells me, and it tells the board, and it tells the DOT that as the years go by, if traffic continues to grow, the delays are going to get longer and longer. So without the donut shop, you're still dealing with 154 seconds of delay. Did I answer the question?
Well, I asked specifically, we're going to do the mitigation. Does the mitigation change any of your numbers?
These numbers are based on that mitigation. We have a row there for left turn departures and one for right turn departures. And it assumes the lengthening of the turn lanes.
Okay.
And like I say, there is no other mitigation you can do in this situation.
Well, Mr. Pernow, if I understand, and maybe this is apropos to what Hal is thinking about, though I have another comment on that, but the added turn lane, the westbound turn lane that is now a really a wide shoulder, but will become a certified turn lane. That is going to obviously carve off a certain amount of traffic. In fact, the traffic that would have been going to the coffee shop that might have been out in the regular lane. So that has a certain mitigating effect, I would think. And you're not referring to that right now because we're talking about it seems to me, the Bow Lake exit right or left onto Route 4. But am I right that by adding that turn lane, there's some mitigating effect on that intersection?
Yeah, yes, you are correct in that when you have the full right turn lane that's being proposed tonight, vehicles that get in that right turn lane and put on their right directional, that will help the driver looking left to decide whether he's going to go or not. But in fairness, and having said that, our analysis in our original traffic study was predicated on a two-lane approach westbound. And that's because we provided the board with a photograph that it shows that that right turn shoulder today is being used as a right turn lane. So
you were taking that into account originally, as you're saying.
Right. But the fact that it's going from 10 feet to 12 feet with a 2-foot shoulder, now it's a full-fledged exclusive turn lane and it will be striped that way. There's going to be more people, I think, that will use it than they are today. So you are right, sir, but it's really not something that we attempted to model or could model. But I see that as a benefit that's really not measurable, but it will help.
Can I make another remark, Bob?
Yep.
I have driven through this intersection many thousands of times, partly just I'm talking 10 years of use. More recently, I actually have driven a school bus for a while. I've driven through this intersection during the busy times in the morning, various other times. I have the experience of both driving through it, going westbound, and turning onto Bow Lake Road. And as anybody can recognize, a bus takes more space, it requires more maneuvering, requires traffic generally to slow down and so forth. And so I'm kind of aware of the significance of that situation, which gets, and there's buses, by the way, coming out of the Co-Brown School, and they're going up Bow Lake Road in the morning. Some do, and some coming actually from the other direction. But that said, what I'm aware of is for instance, traveling westbound towards Concord, is that intersection at that busy time that we're concerned about, and I'm concerned about it too, and I've been trying to puzzle out, because that frankly is the most concerning part of this whole dilemma. We can talk about fences and lighting, a lot of stuff like that. To me, that's minor stuff compared to safety and traffic. And so I've spent time trying to puzzle this, but as I say, I'm a little more familiar than most, perhaps. I'm willing to say that, maybe not everybody, with that intersection, both at school time and at other times. What I'm aware of is as you're going westbound, as you're approaching Bow Lake, you generally are not traveling at the specified speed on that highway, which is 45, and many try to exceed it. But there's no way in the morning you can do that, because not only is there a traffic crossing guard up at the school, which is slowing traffic down at periodic moments for allowing various access at the school, which slows down that traffic significantly both directions, stops it in some cases. But as anybody traveling down the road, you often are slowed down to sometimes a stop even before you get to Bow Lake Road. And that is going westbound on Route 4. And the net result of that to me is it's congested already. And at that point, I experience what I experience even coming out of my little road down the way where there's only busy traffic on Route 4, but I'm the only car, or I'm maybe two cars coming out of it. and I have to wait for a moment. And now, sure, I'm a little annoyed. That's the silly thing of, gee whiz, I usually get right out there. But at busy times in the morning, it's busy and everybody's slowed down. And I think there is a situation that's being overlooked here. Either the traffic, which I say at this busy time that we've been talking about, 7 to 8, so forth, is already slowed down. And it's a matter of really driver courtesy. We are adding cars by having a business there on the corner. We're adding cars one way or the other, and that will add, as has already been described, a certain amount of additional delay. But the fact is a delay is going on at that intersection anyway, and it's not a high-speed situation at these critical times that happen to concern me and apparently everybody else, but they don't exist at those early times in the morning. I want to point that out because Hal, I don't know, I know you live nearby and I'm sure you've gone through that intersection. I have done it, as I say, far more than most. And I do not see it as a high speed problem. I see it as a courtesy problem more than anything else, and whether it actually will function in a reasonable way. So that's said.
Okay. That's a good segue into one of my topics, going on to delays. If referring to the original traffic impact study, Appendix F, right after the Synchro 10 reports, the US 4 Bow Lake Road left turn delay survey. I took a look at that and correlated it to some, I believe it was Ms. Brieger's, but a commenter about the Bow Lake class times. There were at least 2 comments to that effect. But looking at the period between 7:12 a.m. and 7:14 a.m., the average delay just in that just over 2 minutes was at 1 minute and 45 seconds turning left. That's existing traffic. Another 8 minutes on from 7:20 to 7:22, the average delay is 1:38. From 7:30 to 7:35 and a half, the average delay was 1:49. I know at 7:15, according to the abutters, or 2 abutters, that's when buses come in to drop off students at Bow Lake High School, or Co-Brown, not Bow Lake. Working in education myself, the late bell rings at 7:50. So what's happening at 7:30, my supposition, is when gives you 20 minutes to park your car, get across the street, get to your locker, and get to your homeroom class. During those periods of time, though, we are looking at almost minimum 1.5 minute traffic delays trying to turn left out of Bow Lake Road before this application is built.
You done, Bob?
So what? Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I'm sorry, you weren't done. I just asked if you were done and you're not. Keep going.
Not quite. So what I'm wondering is, Mr. Purnell, if you take the existing traffic models and you're looking at adding 47 seconds of delay to existing traffic, are we then looking at, during those periods of time, between 2.5 and 3 minutes of delay trying to turn left? You're at like adding 47 seconds to those fractions of the peak rush hour, potentially.
Well, when you say potentially at this hour of the night, I'm going to say sure. But let me point out a couple of things.
Sure.
And I understand what you're trying to do, look at the delays during certain intervals and try to assign that to,
Well-
when you have to be in school or whatever. The other way to look at it is if observation number 25, happens at 7:15, well, the next observation, just a few minutes later, the delay was 15 seconds.
Sure, exactly.
And the reason why that's happening has to do with random traffic flow.
Mhm.
That, the gaps are not uniform in the traffic stream. And in a way, it depends how lucky you are when you hit the stop bar. And if you hit the stop bar and there's a line of 6 cars that have to go by before you can go, then you're the minute 37-second guy. If you pull up to the line and there's only 1 car coming in each direction, you're the 17-second guy. And that each day it's going to be different. It all depends on when you arrive and what's happening out there. If you go to our, and this certainly does not have statistical significance, but if you go to our January 16th memo and you go to page 2, you'll see a photograph that was taken during our traffic count back in September. And the timestamp on it says 7:25. This is one we just picked because we wanted to show, the board how that right turn shoulder is operating as a right turn lane.
Sure.
That was the purpose. And you can see the school bus going the other way. And again, I don't disagree with the school bus gentleman that says that, things can back up or slow down because of a crossing guard. But in this one particular instance, this is called free flow traffic. And this is probably, if somebody came up here with those kind of gaps, I would think that the delays would be more like observation number 25 or 26. But so anyway, you might be right. Maybe this is directly correlated to when kids have to be in school. I think it has more to do with the randomness of traffic flow. And it just depends when you hit the stop bar.
Okay.
And again, that 40, whatever we were talking about, that increase, that's an average over, let's say, an hour. And again, some people, the increase is going to be shorter. Some people, it's going to be longer. But those delay estimates include the time waiting to move up in the queue. It's not just the time at the stop bar.
Okay.
So it's waiting to get up to the stop bar plus the delay at the stop bar.
Go ahead, Tim. Sorry. Tim, you had a question. I'm done.
No, I don't have a question, just a couple of statements. And I don't want to extend this out any longer personally, but anyway, I just want to say that a number of years ago, not that far ago, I spent an incredible amount of time on Bow Lake and Sherburne Hill Road. I learned very, very quickly. This had to do with trying to improve the road and the fact that it was a historical road, et cetera, or a scenic byway. So, and I was marking literally hundreds of trees, et cetera. I learned very quickly that there are times of the day that I did not want to be out of my truck and on that road, those roads, because of the speed and other things. The road is extremely busy, and that's just my common sense. I go through there probably 2, 3, 4 times a day. The other thing I want to mention, and I certainly agree with the gentleman that, things change from day to day and everything else. And one of the things that changes is when you have a crowd of parents and soccer players leave the soccer fields, and you should see the line, because I happened to hit that not long ago. You should see the line, trying to get out onto Route 4. It's not 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cars. It's 20 or 30 or 40 cars. It's just, I don't know. I personally, and I'll get into this when we have our final comments, but I really don't understand how anybody could even suggest that that's not a very dangerous and busy intersection. And I'm just going to have a really hard time adding to it personally.
Okay. Other questions, comments on traffic from the board?
Bob, can I say something?
Go ahead.
Barring ESP, the future is a crapshoot. But it is still, that is a busy, busy intersection. And adding a business where you've got cars going in and out, in and out, in and out, getting into the line or not, it doesn't make sense. It's certainly not going to make the situation any safer. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Thank you. I think Hal, you raised your hand before, I believe.
Well, I'm debating whether to speak, given that Tim wants to move along, but let me just ask.
I'm not done yet, but go ahead.
A related question, and again, I'm going back on memory, and I apologize to Mr. Pernow about this. But when I studied the more detailed study, one of the things that I thought struck me was the number of people that you estimated that would, for example, on the dismissal of school, turn right out of Academy Way, come up to the coffee shop, come in, buy something, and then return back out and go right out of the coffee shop. And I just remember being struck by that number being relatively low to my expectations. And again, this is just my personal experience, but like when I go to the mobile station in the morning where there's a Dunkin' Donuts to get coffee, I'd have to say that, you know, during school commuting time, there's, I think mostly students going through when I'm getting my gas. And I'd say it, you know, I don't go that often in the afternoon, but that's sort of the, you know, at school time, because I try to avoid it, but that's sort of my premise also. And so I apologize. I don't remember what numbers were there, but I just remember, you know, thinking, wow, one or two students turning up for coffee seems a little low. Can you help me with that?
Sure. And are you referring to the morning peak hour or the evening peak hour?
Well, it applies to both, I believe, but, you know, like I say, I primarily have gone in the morning for gas, and it seems like there's just a large number of students coming through that drive-through. And so, and again, I don't have any hard statistics, but I do remember just in looking at the numbers saying,
yeah.
So I guess maybe the better way to phrase it is, what's the basis? And, you know, how do you think that compares to what we might see at the Dunkin' Donuts?
Yep. So the basis, and that's actually called a pass-by trip. And I think what you're talking about is the kids that might be heading into Academy Way. They're going to pull in, take a right in, get a coffee, take a right out, go back to, and to go to school.
And vice versa, if they're leaving school, they'll take a right out of Academy Way. Then
so what I'm going to say is that when we do that distribution of that pass-by traffic, what we find to be the most reasonable approach is to take the total number of pass-by trips and to distribute them in proportion to the traffic volumes on the three legs of the intersection. And what's happening when we do that, because Route 4 does have, you know, over 600 or 700 cars per hour in that morning peak hour, that's where most of the pass-bys come from. The number of turns into Academy Way are only 81. So that didn't get a big allocation. But, you know, if we did, and we didn't, but if we, you know, elected to throw more toward Academy Way, then that would reduce the impacts out at Route 4 and Bow Lake. And I don't want to do that. You know, that's the critical intersection. So we did it straight in proportion. You talk about the PM peak hour, the number of right turns out of Academy Way, and again, this is from 5 to 6 p.m., is what we analyzed. That's the weekday PM peak hour.
Yeah.
It was only 16 vehicles.
Yeah.
So that's negligible. You know, yeah, maybe one might pull in, but
Yeah, so-
we didn't analyze like the 2 to 3 p.m., which is, you know, when
that
you
answers.
have this from the school. The other thing I wanted to explain to the board, and you won't find it in the traffic study, but this just comes from experience, that if you look at, well, anyway, I'm going to use the term that this proposed donut or coffee shop is on the morning side of the highway. And what that means is that in the morning, the heavier flow is westbound. This coffee shop is going to be used mostly by westbound vehicles because it's an easy right in, get your coffee, and you come back out and you make a right out. That right turn out, you only have to worry about gaps in the westbound direction. If you were heading the other way, you know, the ones that would be tough would be the left in from, you know, eastbound, you take a left, you get your coffee, but now when you come out, you've got that long delay. So a lot of people won't cross over the highway. And again, that's just kind of that's from my experience, that most will come on the heavier direction, and people will oftentimes get a coffee somewhere else where it's easier, where they can make a right in, right out, rather than the left in and left out. So that's, you know, that's just kind of a fact of reality that would probably be a positive thing in the end. But, you know, we do our projections and we call them as we see them.
Yeah, and I recognize it's all statistics, so you can, I pressed for some certainty, but the fact that it's statistics, you can't do that. So I understand.
And again, the numbers are a means to the end. Do we widen the road to 2 lanes or not? Yes. Do we put in a right turn lane westbound? I said no. It was the DOT design that they used, and again, that's in our memo, was fine. And the DOT agreed. But the town pushed, and Mr. Sullivan was willing to make that investment. So again, I look at that, and that's, I don't know, I guess you could say it's more safe or helpful. Sure. You know, you're getting the Cadillac rather than the Chevrolet that I was comfortable with. So I don't know. I think this board has done a good job at getting the mitigation, all of the mitigation you could possibly get. And it's just too bad somebody else didn't have to do part of this as part of their development, but Mr. Sullivan's taking care of both approaches.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the board?
Related to traffic or related to other things?
Well,
other things.
Move to other things. I have some development questions.
Mr. Chair, I do also have something that I would like to bring up.
Okay.
And Attorney Allard may like to respond to it, but I would speculate that we might just disagree with each other. But I can wait for when you're done, or if now is a good time, I can do it now.
Okay. Questions from the board on traffic? Anyone else want to bring up traffic? Okay. James, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify exactly how the Northwood zoning table of permitted uses is structured, because we've heard several statements that this use is permitted by right. We don't have zoning districts with specific permitted uses. We have one district. It has a table with 3 columns and a list of permitted uses. And the meaning of those 3 columns is that they correspond to performance criteria. So you have, for items that are at the top of the list, they have an X in column 1. And that column has a small number of performance criteria in section A. So things that are in column 1 have to comply with section A. They're permitted uses, but they're permitted uses so long as they comply with the performance criteria. A restaurant use is the middle of the list. It's in column 2. So that brings in the section A performance criteria and a somewhat longer list of section B performance criteria. So I would interpret that to say a restaurant is a permitted use any place in Northwood, provided it can comply with the performance criteria of both section A and section B. So to the extent that a restaurant is a permitted use, it is in this board's purview to, and we have done it on other items, to determine whether there are non-compliance issues that need to be remedied in zoning. And I would say in this case, it is your purview to consider whether this is a permitted use that complies with all of the listed performance criteria. Attorney Allard proceeded to make a number of statements that are relevant to whether or not it complies with those performance criteria. And I would encourage you to consider them as you would consider all of the testimony. But it is my understanding of the zoning ordinance that those criteria that are listed in zoning are relevant, and we have already entered into this record the town's interpretation that it is your purview to interpret them as part of this application, and that nobody else has made a determination and nobody else is authorized to interrupt these proceedings to make that determination. That's on you. So I'm done, Attorney Allard, if you want to respond.
Yeah, when I use the term permitted use or permitted by right, I mean that what I mean by that is we do not need to go to the zoning board to get a variance for this use. This is a use that is permitted by zoning. Yes, the criteria that you mentioned in terms of the various conditions in the zoning ordinance have to be met. I agree. We don't just throw those away. They're in the zoning ordinance. But when I use the term permitted by right or permitted use, I mean it strictly in the limited sense of we do not need to go to the zoning board to get a variance for this use. It's not a prohibited use. It's an allowed use. But yes, those conditions are there.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. That's always like to double check that. Okay. I'm going to supply a couple comments on traffic as far as volume goes. We're looking at, because we addressed the delays in the queuing before. One of the things I want to get to is for comparisons during the morning peak hour for a general office for a single family residence and a drive-through restaurant without seating. You're looking at, for the general office and residence, 1 trip in that peak hour versus 41 to 45 trips or vehicles coming into that same business during that same peak hour. In looking at the comparison for the 2020 no build versus build vehicles per day, traffic on Bow Lake Road moves from, according to the traffic analysis, 241 vehicles per day to 320 vehicles per day. I've seen, by my math, it comes up to 33% increase. I've seen 33%, I've seen 30. I think DOT calculated at 30, but increase of that. And what I'm struggling with is the zoning ordinance of 5B1A1, referring to by its nature or design or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, The use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which it is proposed to be sited. You know, we're looking at, yes, it is a 1% or what is it? 1 to 2%, I think, of traffic change on Route 4, but that doesn't bother me. The 33% increase in traffic on Bow Lake Road does bother me. Yeah, that's all I had. What other topics do board members want to bring up as far as questions? Go ahead, Hal.
I'd like to just ask if we could once again, and just so folks know where I'm coming from, I'm trying to go through where, you know, like with the traffic, you know, you have the applicant or, you know, somebody for the applicant saying one thing, and then you've got, you know, like in this case, Karen Brieger and others like Jim Hadley saying, oh my gosh, you know, the traffic's terrible. I'm really trying to push hard on all these to make sure we understand the details so that both sides feel that we've discussed it thoroughly. So that's really where I'm coming from. And I do have some questions related to the change in value or not a change in value to the Severance's home. That seems to be one of the areas where we've had testimony from the applicant saying, no, the value isn't going to change. And we've got numerous folks saying, oh, geez, no, it's going to change drastically. So I'd like to understand, you know, the basis for the gentleman that came in and spoke to us regarding values, because he was supposedly the expert, certainly had the credentials, and I'd just like to understand again what he was saying in terms of why the value would not change. So if somebody could help me on that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone want to take that up? I guess.
So I can tell you that Vern Gardner is not with us tonight to answer that question. I think that the information that he gave was pretty thorough. I think there was a second follow-up letter that he provided, possibly related to that, maybe not. But so either way, that would be not something that any one of us, particularly here tonight, was expecting or is an expert on.
Okay. Well, maybe that's one, like I was referencing, Bob, where we have to ask or would request staff help us find that data. And that could be part of what we have in front of us for deliberations, maybe.
Well, I'm trying to see. Mr. Gardner, is that the name? Yeah, let me see. I have.
So Hal, I believe my staff report on the last page where I list all of the numerous expert submissions on behalf of multiple parties. I believe I refer to multiple submissions by Mr. Carenti, who was the appraiser on behalf of the Severances, as well as in a parenthetical, I believe Mr. Gardner's submission was part of a much larger submission by the applicant team. So there will be a parenthetical that lists which date that was received. And for some reason, Adobe doesn't want to show me my own staff report.
If we can have that, again, Bob, if
November
we're
20th,
comfortable waiting and finding it, and looking at it after the fact here, if that's procedurally okay.
It's certainly okay for you to continue to review the materials in the record if you are still deliberating at a future meeting. So I would suggest that you review those original submissions. I believe if we received that document in November of 2019.
November 20th, 2019.
Yep, then Mr. Gardner was present at a meeting to testify sometime after that. So your options for minutes for that testimony are between the end of November 2019 and March 2020, because it was in person.
James.
So the submission was November 20th of 2019. Mr. Gardner was present at a meeting after that date. And the last time that we discussed this prior to switching to Zoom for the pandemic and having a long pause was in February or March of 2020. So that only gives you a few sets of minutes to look at over those 4 months for when he testified in person.
We would be certainly willing to offer to have Mr. Gardner come to the meeting at the next meeting if needed.
I think I think we're going to have to. Well, I shouldn't speak. My understanding of the process was we were closing that. So I have to say James, are you saying that was one of the ones where we were already on video? Because then I could go back and review that too.
No, we were not on Zoom when Mr. Gardner was here, because if you'll recall, it was probably at least 2 or 3 months before we felt comfortable conducting business via Zoom. And then the applicant requested a number of continuances because it was sometime before they felt comfortable conducting their business over Zoom. So I'm confident that Mr. Gardner appeared before we switched to a Zoom public hearing.
Maybe the Lakes region.
What's that?
Possible it's on live stream, which would be on YouTube.
Yeah, or is it possible it might be on
No,
Lakes
the
region?
live stream is not YouTube.
Is it
Oh,
possible?
I'm sorry. You're right, Susan.
It's
Would
its own app.
would it be on the town website?
Right. There's a link to it at the very front page, top left-hand corner.
So Hal, if what you're saying is you would like us to help you find a link to that meeting, we'll help you look after this meeting and we'll send it along if we can find it.
And maybe just refresh where those, or resend that submission. And we might be able to sort it out from that. I should say we will be able to. I think between seeing the testimony again and reading the submission, I'll be okay. I don't want to disrupt the process here.
Okay, sorry about that. My system just crashed. And I lost my camera.
Recording.
Now you're in twice, Bob.
Yes, I know. Okay. A little desperate to get back in. Sorry about that. Okay. What did I miss?
An extended discussion of when Vern Gardner testified before the board.
Okay, yes.
Hal would like us to locate the link to the recording of that meeting and distribute it. So
Okay.
we will do that.
I had it pulled up. He presented on January 23rd. I can read, let me read this. Yes, the minutes do not include anything aside from that Ms. Vern Gardner of Verizon Associates made a presentation.
The video of that date, if it's planning board 12320, is on the website.
Okay, send us the link, please, and then that should be suffice.
Oh, actually, well, take that. Well, there's two reference of the minutes, that compilation of minutes that Linda sent around Gardner is mentioned twice, once on the 23rd and again on March 12th.
We should be able to find it. Let's not take the meeting time to find it.
That helps speed things along.
I'm comfortable reading and watching the video again. That'll suffice for me.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the board to the applicant's team? This is going to be a going once, going twice kind of thing, even if I don't formally state that.
So if that's the case, Bob, could we, could I request a 3-minute break, please?
Has been another hour. So sure. Why don't we take another break until 9:45?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Am I back on?
You are, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
How much longer?
Well,
I don't normally like to say this, but until you're out of questions.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where we're at. It sounds like we're running out, though.
Well, I've still got discussion points, but not questions.
Exactly. That's where we're at. And that's the next, once we're out of questions, then we can move into discussion. Attorney Allard has agreed that, you know, where we need to end tonight is closing the public hearing, which means then we are in deliberation. It also means that we can no longer have material input from town staff. I think I said that correctly. We can have procedural input from town staff.
They can help us find stuff, right? Or no?
I think we can still help you find stuff.
Yeah, like the video or something, if we,
Yes.
I mean, that was helpful.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. But we can't ask for opinion
No.
of town staff or anyone else. So that's what tonight is for, is I want to get all the questions out of the way.
Okay, I got 2 more and then I'm done.
Okay. If we're back.
Promises.
Now. Hey, come on, guys. If anyone is tired, it is me. I've been up since 3 a.m. Thank you.
Oh, Betty, come on.
Okay, go ahead, Hal.
Okay, so don't take this personally, but I just want to make sure the numbers for the greenhouse in terms of number of cars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is on the plan and is correct. And this is in reference to a previous case, not yours, but I just want to rest assured that the numbers related to the greenhouse are on the documents you submitted. And a yes or no would suffice.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then the second one, I did notice one other discrepancy. If we could just clear it up. Ms. Manzelli indicated that this appears to her to be a unbranded coffee shop. And all we talked about was an Aroma Joe's coffee shop. Are we confirming that it's an Aroma Joe's?
Mike could address that, but that's what we've always proposed.
Yes.
And then Bob, I guess the question would be, is a change in chain or a change in style or whatever up for review then, or how does that work?
Well, the use is what would be whatever proposed as a coffee shop. You know, it's a generic use on the table of accepted uses, not necessarily an Aroma Joe's. So it would, provided that, let's say, for instance, Dunkin' Donuts wanted to buy it because they're taking over the world, that would be, I say that facetiously, to me, and it wouldn't be my decision, that would remain a coffee shop or a drive-through restaurant without seating.
I think what we would look at is the operation of that future coffee shop.
Okay, so
if
the changes.
If Tesla Coffee chose to purchase the site and operate it exactly the same way as is proposed before you, it would require no change of use.
I got it. Okay.
If Aroma Joe's chooses to change their business model and they built a patio with a large number of seating, or built an inside thing, there's no change of ownership, but the change in the use pattern would likely trigger site plan.
Got it.
So we would look at future proposed changes to the pattern of use. And I think that there are some jurisdictions who are very anti putting the branding on this site plan. There are others who would like to see it. There are some chains that would prefer not to have their name out there in the site plan review process. So there may have been some changes to the documents along the way based on some of those factors, but I haven't been concerned about whether any of the specifics were related to the branding or not, or changing the proposed use pattern.
Yeah, so to take that one step further, let's just make the point. So the traffic study included some numbers based on some, like a Tilton, Aroma Joe's and stuff like that. I think what you're saying, James, is it's reasonable for us to expect that even if it wasn't an Aroma Joe's here, but a similar type operation, modeling it after an Aroma Joe's is not unreasonable.
I mean, I think I would defer to Mr. Perna and the applicant's team for the reasonability of that. But
I can't ask him that. I used up my 2 questions.
So I'm not sure what Hal's asking. We obviously went from, well, I mean, I know what he's asking, but we obviously went from a Korean restaurant to a absolutely wonderful bagel shop. It wasn't a change of use. It's a restaurant to a restaurant, and they did not require a change of use coming to the planning board.
I'm just trying to make sure that I've cleared up all the deltas that were listed, Tim. And that was one of the deltas, and I'm just asking.
yeah, so I've spoken to how we would interpret changes of use or changes of ownership. But yeah, again, I would defer to the applicant's team as to whether in any way corporate identity or corporate operations would impact assumptions that go into models or design or things like that.
I seem to recall that the only time Aroma Joe's traffic was involved was the comparisons of the bypass traffic capture for the Tilton model and the other one that I forget where it was located.
Yeah, I just remember them being mentioned. That's why.
That's where it came from. It wasn't, it was how much was captured from the roadway into the shop, not necessarily dealing with based on corporate sales, as opposed to, the volume having a little bit of engineering experience way back in undergrad for civil engineering in traffic. The traffic models that I've ever seen don't deal with, McDonald's for fast food comparison. Doesn't matter what it is or who the brand name is. It's the use is a fast food restaurant drive-through without tables or whatever kinds of things, because there's not that much difference between operations from one. It's the same effect as our table of uses.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I'm just trying to force our way down through any deltas that I saw, and we're doing that.
What else do you have?
That's it. I told Betsy I'd only have 2 questions. That's it.
Okay.
May I speak to one of the comments?
Sure. Go right ahead.
So I just want to make the board aware that there is a 20-year legal commitment to have this as an Aroma Joe's as part of this. So if I was to die for some reason, then this effectively legally has to stay in Aroma Joe's as far as the corporate paperwork that is signed. So
interesting.
Okay, good.
Okay. Good to know.
They work. So they could effectively say, hey, well, we're going to come in and take it over, and because you're dead now, and it's a 20-year commitment to do this for us for the property itself.
Okay. So what is next would be, if the board has no questions, third time I'll ask. Does the applicant have any final statements to make for anything the board has brought up? Okay. What I would entertain is a motion and let me complete my statement before you start speaking the motion, is that we close the public hearing. What that means is that the board has no other option for input from the applicant, from town staff, as far as the merits of the case. We can ask town staff for procedural questions and assistance in locating items already in the public record for this case, such as, for instance, Linda just emailed out the link to the video of the one meeting. We cannot ask them for opinion. We cannot, we can get them, like I said, statements of fact. We would go into deliberation, and at the end of deliberation, we would have a decision made. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. The applicant has agreed that if we close the public hearing tonight and we go into deliberation, we would have one more meeting to be scheduled for deliberation, and only deliberation. That would not be part of the public record, but public would not be they can observe, they cannot participate. Nor can members of the applicant, nor can town staff, aside from, as I said, those conditions on their.
Slight clarification, it would be part of the public record.
Yes, yes.
Because we will have minutes,
Yes.
but yes, it will be a fishbowl.
Sorry, yeah, I meant public hearing, not public record. It's getting late. Okay, is the board clear on that? I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah.
I think that's the most I've seen of anybody. Okay, we will give the motion to Tim and the second to Ms. Betty Smith. Okay. Discussion on the motion to go into deliberation. Hearing none. Susan, could do a roll call vote, please.
Betty,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, we are now in deliberation. At not quite 10 o'clock.
Can I speak
think-
to that?
Close enough.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I know everybody wants to quit, and I appreciate it's late, etc. To the best of my knowledge, the only thing pending is that Hal would like to understand the reasoning behind Mr. Gardner's decision or statement that it would not harm the value of the property, and that certainly is clearly enunciated in the minutes of March 12, 2020, and I'd be happy to read it. I'm saying that personally, I'm ready to vote. I think that, if people have something to say, let's say it. I really will vote against taking this to another meeting.
Okay. Anyone else have any interest in either way? I think if we're going
It
to
is 10 o'clock.
It is 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we make a better decision when we're not tired, but
I tend to agree. So we're in deliberation. We have one member who is ready to vote. Anyone else want a sense of the board? You want to end this tonight, or you want to go on one more meeting?
I
Betty?
would prefer one more meeting.
Tim,
I'm ready to vote.
ready to vote? Hal?
This has gone on a long time.
I think to give everybody their due, so to speak, I think to shorten the deliberation would give the impression that we didn't really give it well thought out. And, I understand, it might go to litigation either way, and a short decision never bodes well in my mind when you go to court. And so I think, from that perspective, it makes more sense to wait.
Joe?
Well, I'm of a mind where I would like to see this over, but I mean, this is a 2-year plus process. It's way too long for a variety of reasons. Some of them, in my mind, have been unreasonable to begin with. So we're in a situation where there seems to be a couple of lingering questions. I have heard some information once again about the traffic studies. Frankly, I wanted to just parse that out, I guess, one more time, and I haven't had the opportunity to do it this evening, and it's way too late now for me to just, as we've been going along here, to work this out. I think a few things had to be thought about. Some people seem to have had their minds made up. So be it. But I think this deserves just the final look-see. Make sure that everybody who thinks they've got a decision, they've got their ducks in a row. I would like to move that or move on with one more consideration.
Okay.
That is to say, we finally decide this in the next meeting.
Okay. I'm the same way from a perspective of, I would like, and I'll charge the board with doing so, one of the factors in our decision is listing findings of fact as for the statements made by tonight and in the public record. As far as things go for what we would like, and I would like a little bit of time to get my findings of fact written down, because I prefer not to have those done on the fly in the evening, especially not at 10 o'clock. So I too would like to go to another meeting. The question is how long and when we can schedule that. I would not like to do so on our next regular meeting, which is the 20, whatever day it is.
Well, let's
So
see,
your
Bob.
next meeting would be Thursday, the 24th.
Can you-
So if you don't want to do that night, your options would be to push to July. The workshop is Thursday, July 8th. The regular meeting is Thursday, July 22nd, or to consider scheduling a special session.
I would schedule a special session myself. The end of this.
Could you please remind what is on schedule for the 24th currently?
We have at least 2 new applications.
Plus Chestnut and Cape, I believe.
And Chestnut and Cape.
Okay.
So I would strongly suggest that we move off of a Thursday night. I mean, this is the only thing we have a session to deliberate on this application. I think we can afford to do that any other time that's convenient for the board.
So at this point, there will be no public hearing. So between continuing to a date and time certain and posting an agenda in the necessary public places, we're no longer required to meet anything more than about 24 hours public meeting notice, is my understanding. So we could go quicker, but I am not sure, and I would prefer that Hal or Linda speak to whether the town has a plan for how in-person meetings are working, with the understanding that we have to have at least an in-person quorum.
Because the executive order has expired. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Correct. So we would either need to be able to make the case that an emergency continues to exist and there's a pressing need that we can no longer postpone the business to be able to continue meeting online, or we would need to have at least a quorum of the board present in one location.
Yeah, I might be able to speak to that now, and that is that Walter is making preparations for the select board to meet on Tuesday evening in town hall. He believes that we can meet all the criteria and do that safely. There's 5 board members, and I think we'll have as a quorum 5 planning board members. So if Walter's successful, I'll check with him tomorrow, but if he's successful in figuring out how to do that at town hall, which he indicated he was, then we should be able to meet on Thursday, same as the select board does. Now that would maybe affect who can view it personally. I don't know those details, but as of right now, the select board is planning and expecting to meet in person
On Tuesday.
on Tuesday.
Would there be any possibility for the board to meet on Wednesday
Oh, instead of Thursday.
instead of Thursday?
As long as we are certain that if you let me confirm that we're okay for Tuesday, I'm sure any day after that's fine.
Well, I'm asking. I mean, that's not our normal. Thursday is our normal night.
Oh, I thought you were asking in terms of town hall being available. That I don't know, but I can confirm that also. If
I'm
you
asking because I'm expecting to be traveling on Thursday.
Oh,
So I will need to be, if we are meeting after Thursday, some Thursday or Friday, I will need to be able to Zoom in.
In which case we would need some sort of a hybrid format and still have a quorum of the board present in person
I could
for
even
you to be able to participate electronically.
I could do Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. That would give me Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to do findings of fact deliberations or preparations for deliberations, reviewing videos of minutes or of meetings, etc.
I can meet Wednesday.
Wednesday would be fine with me. Is there anyone else who could do Wednesday?
I can do Wednesday.
Joe, Tim?
Joe here. Yes, I'll go along with the consensus of everybody cooperating here. That's
So Wednesday. Tim?
Wednesday.
Tim, you have Wednesday?
I'm available any night.
Okay.
Whoa, wow, good.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, what I suggest, we meet Wednesday at our normal 6:30, or at least what, 4 of us have to meet Wednesday in person at town hall.
We would need a quorum of 4 in person.
4, okay.
When is
Wednesday
your
at 6.
official last day, Bob?
Pardon me?
When is your official last day?
Friday at 5 p.m.
Next Friday or this Friday?
This
That's
Friday.
our next item on the
Yeah, that's
agenda
our next-
tonight
don't
is
get
to
too
appoint
far.
Bob as an alternate so we can also
Too
get.
far. Okay, are we in agreement for Wednesday at 6:30?
Bob, you have a audience
I
member.
have a hand up.
Okay.
We haven't made a motion yet.
I have a question about the availability for members of the public to attend the meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Manzelli.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that members of the public, either through a Zoom link or by going to the town hall, would be able to attend in the listening only mode. Understood?
Yes.
Thank you.
That will be made
My
sure.
understanding, I don't think we can promise in person.
Yeah, whether remote or in person, it's a transition we're all going through. I understand. Thank you.
It might just be a single camera on a laptop in town hall, but they will be able to at least see something.
Well, we have the live stream all set up.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, right.
I mean, if it's just
But Susan,
listen
it's been
only,
so long since I've been in there, I totally forgot about that. Okay, anyway,
it's still there. I mean,
Yes, it's
I don't
still
know where
there.
it would have gone.
so Wednesday, June 16th at 6:30. Why won't this? Okay, so we are set for that. I would entertain a motion to that effect so that we have it for the record.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Mr. Kreider. Can we, since we've all agreed to it, can we do avoid a voice? We'll just do a unanimous vote. Yes,
Okay.
Sounds good.
thank you. Okay. Wednesday at 6:30. Thank you for your flexibility. How do we close deliberation without closing?
With a motion to continue to the date and time certain.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to that effect then, Wednesday at 6:30.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Hold on, so that first motion was just for,
I forgot to end it. Or to continue the case. It's getting late.
I'm sorry. I'll figure it out when I listen to this.
Yeah.
Okay, Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes, both instances.
Al,
Yes.
Tim,
Oh, yes, I guess.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, we are continued to Wednesday at 6:30. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Ladies too.
Do we need,
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, before you do that, stop.
Do that yet.
Please no.
Can't do that yet.
Bob will not be a member of the board as an active member beyond Friday. So
Yes.
we would like Bob to hand the chair over to Lee, put her back in the voting designation, and take a motion to appoint Bob as an alternate for continuing cases beyond his term.
So Lee, are you
will
with us?
still need to
So
sign
I
his
should unmute
oath
now,
prior
huh?
to the next meeting.
You should unmute now, and I
We
will.
make that effective Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I am ceding my chair authority for the meeting tonight, and the vice chair can take over.
Okay. So we need a motion to add Bob as an alternate starting Monday.
So moved.
second,
Okay, moved by Hal and seconded by Betty. Can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Joe,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Betty,
yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Bob,
Abstain.
okay, and Lee.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for that, I guess.
Thank you.
Welcome
okay.
to the board.
Yeah. So for now, Lee is for the. I guess for the. Well, no. Lee can. chair.
You can have it back.
No, I don't want it back. I got to get used to not being in the chair.
Now we do not object to a final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
Third,
Who made the motion? I missed it.
Tim and Hal
Okay,
seconded.
Motion by
Everybody.
Tim and seconded by everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So we are adjourned at, I can't see. I can't
10:15.
10:15.
At 10:15.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, staff. Please make sure that emails go
Thanks,
out.
Bob.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, all.
Reminder for Wednesday at 6:15.
I've already put it on my work calendar.
Great. So did I.